in court. My name is Heather, and this is the part four of the defense's case in the Menendez brothers trial. This is the 1993 trial, and we are fortunate enough to have the entire trial streamed. It was one of the first trials where Court TV was streamed a trial from gavel gavel. So it's good learning um, tool for us today. And that's why I watch these because, well, I just find it fascinating and I love to learn. All right, so I'm going to shrink myself here and let us get started. The first person on the stand is Mary Dominguez, and she helped the family move in. There's going to be a lot of testimony today, a lot of different people testifying today. So I hope I got it straight. Bear with me if I don't, but I think I do.
Would you tell us your full name and spell your last name?
My name is Mary Teresa Dominguez, Dominguez,
Just spell Teresa, please.
Theresa.
Mrs. Dominguez, what is your current occupation?
I work for Stater Brothers. I'm a department head there.
And Stater Brothers is a supermarket chain?
Yes, it is.
Do you have a sister who is also employed?
Yes, I do.
And what is your sister's name?
Her name is Linda Martinez.
And by whom is Miss Martinez employed?
Mark Slotkin.
And do you know what Mark Slotkin does, what his business is?
He deals in real estate and, I forget the other part that he does, but
Does he also have a furniture company?
yes, he does. He deals in leasing antiques.
Now, to the best of your knowledge, in 1988, did Mr. Slotkin own a house
Yes, he
at
did.
722 Elm Drive in Beverly Hills?
Yes, he did.
And was there a time that you were aware that Mr. Slotkin had sold that house to a family named Menendez?
Yes.
Now, did you, at the time the house was sold, were you employed by Mr. Slotkin to do something with respect to his moving from the house?
Yes, I did. I was working there to remove all his belongings.
And were other members of your family working with you there as well?
Yes, my 3 children and my mother.
And over what period of time did you work for Mr. Slotkin at that home?
For a week.
And at the end of that week, what was the status of Mr. Slotkin's personal belongings?
Everything was removed. My sister had conducted an inventory of all his belongings.
And after Mr. Slotkin's belongings had been removed, were someone else's belongings delivered to the house?
The Menendez family had started bringing their things in.
Now, while you were working there packing up Mr. Slotkin, did you meet Mrs. Menendez?
Yes, I did.
And was there a conversation with Mrs. Menendez about your employment?
She asked me if I would stay and help her
And help her do what?
unpack.
And did you agree to do that?
Yes.
And therefore, when did you start working for Mrs. Menendez in relation to when Mr. Slotkin had his possessions removed?
The Monday following the weekend, I finished on Sunday for Mark, and I started on Monday.
And how long did you work at the house on Elm Drive for the Menendezes, assisting them to unpack?
I think it was a little over a week.
And at some point in that week or so period, did you have a conversation with Mrs. Menendez about her husband?
I asked her what her husband did for a living.
And what did she tell you her husband did for a living?
She told me he was a plastic surgeon.
And did she say anything about his practice?
Yes, she told me they came from Florida and they went to New York, and he had a good practice out there, and they decided to come to California, and that they were going to live in Calabasas, or they were living there, building a home there.
And then she indicated now they had moved to Beverly Hills?
Yes,
And did she indicate that he had had a plastic surgery practice in Calabasas?
Yes,
Now, during this week or so period that
Why did she lie about that? I mean, he was a successful businessman who ran certain company, a CEO of like whatever records. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I can't do details, my brain. Plus it's early in the morning for me. So that's why I'm drinking my coffee. um yeah, so why did she lie to him? He was a successful CEO or whatever of some record label, and he managed all these up and coming bands that were very, very well known and popular and making them lots of money. So I don't know why she would lie about what he did for a living. Anybody have any idea why or guesses? I don't know.
you observed, did you see Mrs. Menendez every day during that period?
I've seen her almost every day.
And when you saw her, did she always or usually seem to be holding something in her hand?
Objection, Your Lord. Overruled. You can answer the question.
Yes,
And what was it that you saw her holding in her hand when you saw her?
a glass.
And was it an empty glass or was it a glass with liquid?
It had liquid in it.
And could you tell what the type of liquid was?
No.
And would you see her sipping from or drinking from this glass?
Yes.
Over that same period of time, did you observe Mrs. Menendez on the telephone?
Yes, she was on the phone quite a bit.
And did you ever see her making calls in a somewhat unusual manner?
She just seemed upset a lot.
What role the answer will stand?
Did you see her, or did you notice her leaving the house at any point to make telephone calls?
Yes, she would go out to her car and make phone calls.
So she'd make phone calls from the car phone?
Yes.
And to the best of your knowledge, at the time that she would do that, were the phones in the house working?
Yes.
Weird.
During the time that you worked at that house, did you have an opportunity to see the layout of all of the rooms?
Yes.
And calling your attention to the master bedroom, did you observe the bathrooms that were attached to the master bedroom?
Yes.
And with respect to one of them, did you observe any feature or aspect of one of those bathrooms that was new to your experience?
Objection. You're relatively vague as a time.
Objection sustained. Please rephrase the question.
Did you observe the shower in one of the master bedroom bathrooms?
Yes, I did.
And would you describe for the juries what that shower looked like?
Objection. Vague as a time. I believe this was before the Menendez had moved in.
Sustained.
Was the shower in the same condition after the Menendez family moved in as it was before?
Yes, it was.
Would you describe what the shower looked like?
It was really long, I'd say, from maybe the end of the desk to probably about right here. And they had openings on two different sides, and it had maybe 8 shower heads.
It was larger than an ordinary shower?
Yes.
And based on its size, did it appear that more than one person could fit in it at a time?
Yes.
Excuse me, I can we get an estimate of the...
I don't know. What were you referring to?
Just the length of it.
What
the
length? What were you pointing to?
The end of the desk, I
What do you
believe.
mean over here? This right here? What I'm pointing to? From here
Yes.
to where you are?
Yes, to about right here.
About 8 feet or so.
Now, do you recall a day when you were
Why would you need a shower that big with 8 shower heads?
working at the Menendez home when you came across some printed material in 2 different locations in the home?
Yes.
And would you first tell us what were the 2 different locations where you noticed this printed material?
In the master bedroom, on window seat, and on the floor.
And was there another room in the house where you saw similar printed material the same day?
In the library by the entry.
Now, this library by the entry, you notice this courtroom is what we call paneled. It has wooden walls.
Yes.
And did that library by the entry also have wooden walls, paneled?
Yes, it did.
Now, would you describe for the members of the juries what the nature of this printed material was?
It was men.
Vague as to which printed material she's speaking about at this point. I believe there's master bedroom and then also the library.
Yes, you can be more precise.
Was the printed material both in the master bedroom that you observed and in the library of the same type and nature?
Yes, they were.
And would you describe what these things were?
It was males. It was pornography.
And it was pornographic what? Magazines, books, what?
Magazines.
And it depicted what sex?
Male.
All males?
Yes.
And did it show males doing things with other males?
Yes.
What, without getting graphic, what kinds of things?
Having sex.
Okay. And if I could focus your attention on the materials that you saw in the master bedroom, approximately how many of these magazines did you see?
There was a box, and it had stacks about, I'd say, maybe this high.
If you hold your hands up to the judge.
About this high.
When you say a
2
box,
inches or so. 2.5 inches.
Probably more than that, a little more than that.
3 inches.
was it like a packing box?
Yes, it was.
Let me show you something, just as an example. I'm holding a box right now just for size purposes. How would this box that I'm holding, which, Your Honor, just as a standard Fellows Archive Bankers type box, how would this box compare in size to the one that you saw in the master bedroom?
The other was larger.
Larger than
Yes, because they had magazines laying flat, and then they had some that were on the side, and maybe a few videos that were in there.
There were videos in the box
Yes.
as well? And were all the magazines that you observed in the box of that same sexual nature?
Yes, because I kind of went through a few of them.
Now, turning to the, and now, strike that. Apart from the magazines and videos in the box, were there also magazines on the window seat?
Yes.
And were they, from what you could observe, also pornographic magazines?
Yes, they were the ones I looked at first.
And all of the magazines that you noticed were male-on-male sex?
Yes.
Now, turning your attention to the materials in the library, were those also magazines of the same type?
Yes.
And what size stack of materials did you see in the library?
There was just one stack in there.
And did it appear to be all magazines?
Yes.
And did it appear to be the same type?
Yes.
Now, later on the same day in which you observed these magazines, did you notice that they were gone?
Yes, they were.
Was Mrs. Menendez at home, the Elm Drive house, when you made your observations of these magazines?
Yes, she was.
Now, on one of the occasions when you were, one of the days when you worked at this house, did you see Lyle and Eric Menendez at the house?
Yes, I did.
And on that same day, did you see their father, Jose Menendez?
Yes.
And would you tell us what behavior, what activity you observed on the day that you saw both Mr. Menendez and the sons?
They were going outside to play tennis.
And who's they?
The father and the sons, and the mother was going to join them.
And how do you know they were going outside to play tennis?
Mrs. Menendez told me.
And did you see the sons and the father inside the house and exiting towards the tennis court?
Yes, I did.
And did you observe the demeanor or the looks of the sons at that time?
Yes, they were very sad. They looked like they were going to a funeral instead of going outside to enjoy themselves.
All right, objection sustained. The answer is stricken. You can rephrase the question.
Thank you. You've indicated they looked sad.
Yes.
Are there other adjectives you could describe without making an analogy to describe what their demeanor was? Did they seem lighthearted or serious? Did they seem frivolous or solemn?
Solemn.
Poor boys.
Now, at some point after you had made this, well, let's start this. At some point, did you learn that Mr. and Mrs. Menendez had died?
Yes, through my sister.
Through Linda?
Yes.
And at some point before you learned that they had died, do you believe you told your sister about these things that you saw in the house?
Objection, hearsay.
Objection sustained. As to the form of the question, it's also vague as to what.
I'll withdraw that question, Your Honor. Mrs. Dominguez, did you, recently, put in process a string of events resulting in the defense in this case being contacted? No, I'll rephrase the question. Did you discuss your observations recently with your sister?
Yes, I did.
And was this the first time that you had told your sister about the magazines, or do you believe you had told her earlier?
I told her earlier.
And do you believe you told her before Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were killed or afterwards?
Before.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any examination on behalf of Lyle Menendez?
No, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you. Mrs. Dominguez, you indicated that your sister works with a man by the name of Mark Slotkin,
Yes.
and she's been working with him for some 23 years, is that
Yes.
right? Does she work at the furniture business?
Yes.
And how long has she been working there?
Well, that business hasn't, well, it's been there almost as long, but she started with a handbag manufacturing company that he started.
This furniture business, is it located in downtown Los Angeles area?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Eric Menendez's girlfriend, Noelle Terlesky?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the form of the question. It assumes facts not in evidence, calls for
Rephrase the question,
speculation.
please.
Are you familiar with a woman by the name of Noelle Terlesky?
No.
Did your sister, Linda, ever mention
Objection,
that?
hearsay.
Mention what?
Mentioned that Noelle Terlesky works
Objection,
at that business?
hearsay.
Objection sustained.
Your sister actually works at that location?
Yes.
Now, when is it that you first spoke to anyone on this defense team about what you're testifying to today?
I'd say about a week and a half ago.
And the first time you were ever interviewed was on September 6th, is that correct?
Yes.
So you never told the defense team or anyone else about this, is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, this makes the testimony.
Overruled.
Is that correct, ma'am?
No.
You never told the defense about this until the 6th of September, is that right?
I talked to my sister, and my sister talked to someone for me.
So your sister got a hold of the defense,
Yes.
and then your sister then got a hold of you?
Yes.
Did your sister ever mention that she had spoken to anyone that she worked with at Mark Slotkin's furniture shop in Los Angeles?
Objection, Your Honor, I think that's pretty vague. I'm sure she's talking to somebody.
Okay, counsel, let's not expand beyond the legal objection. All right, objection sustained. Rephrase the question.
What discussion did you have with your sister about getting in touch with the defense in this case?
I told her I remembered about the magazines, and I felt I really couldn't sleep at night. I was thinking about it all the time, and I didn't know if it was of value. So I asked her what I should do.
Now, what prompted you to think that this perhaps was relevant?
Because I was getting ready to go to work in the morning, and I was listening to the radio.
And when was this?
This was, I'd say, 2 weeks ago.
Had you ever heard about
I'm
this
not
case?
sure the witness had finished her answer, Your Honor.
All right, objection overruled that she had responded to it. Next question, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Had you not heard of this case prior to 2 weeks ago?
Yes, I've heard of it.
In fact, you knew when the Menendezes were murdered. Isn't that correct?
I'm going to object to the use of that word, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question.
You were aware when Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were shotgunned to death.
I'm going to object to that characterization.
Overruled.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was 4 years ago?
Yes.
And had you been following this case at all?
Not really.
When you say not really, what do you mean by that?
I mean, I heard what happened to the parents, And I really don't get to watch TV or anything, very often. So I'd hear a little here and there. And it wasn't until I had heard about the children being abused.
Now, when was that?
Oh, I really can't remember when I started hearing about that.
Would you say that it was months ago that you had heard those claims?
I really can't say that it was months ago. I really don't know.
How did you get your information? Was it through the television or through the newspapers?
It was the radio.
The radio. So you listened to a particular radio
Yes.
station?
Yes.
What is that?
It's called the Cat. It's a Western station.
And periodically there would be reports about this case?
Yes.
And at some point you heard that the brothers were claiming abuse?
I'm going to object to the form of question, Your Honor.
Overrule.
Is that correct?
I heard that the father had been abusing the children and that he was showering with them. That's when I remembered.
Okay, you heard that on the radio?
Yes.
Now, at some point, did you talk to your sister right after you had heard this on the radio?
Not at first.
Not at first?
No.
When was it that you first spoke to her?
Oh, I guess it was maybe a couple of days later because it was eating at me. I just kept thinking about it. So I talked to her and told her, and
I find her incredibly credible. She is very credible, in my opinion. I feel like, she saw something that just kind of didn't sit right, but she never said anything about it. It was just one of those things that she placed in the back of her mind, but it kept nagging at her until she told her sister, because then she finds out through the media that there were things going on in that house that would explain some of the things that she saw. So I find her very credible.
she said,
I'm going to object, Your Honor, to what the sister said.
Your next question, please.
Anyway, you had a discussion with your sister.
Yes.
Did you ever go to the furniture store in Los Angeles?
I've been there before.
You have been there?
Yes.
Have you seen Noelle Terlesky there?
No, this was a long time ago.
How long ago?
The last time I was there, probably when I did that job for Mark.
In 1988?
88.
Now, you indicated that you did this job for Mark Slatkin, correct?
Yes.
And he was the owner of the house in Beverly Hills at 722 North Elm?
Yes.
Now, were you aware that he had rented that house?
Yes.
Okay. And were you aware that he had rented the house to Prince and to Elton John?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you were helping Mark Slatkin move, was it...
And the point of getting that in was? What was the point of that? Prosecution? What does that have to do with anything?
Were all the furnishings in the house?
He had men moving things out, but there was some things that were kept that they were purchasing, the Menendez family.
Certain pieces of
Furniture.
Were you mainly there to do cleaning? You've indicated that you were in the shower. Were you cleaning?
Yes.
Was that the main purpose of why you were there for this period of time, that you were cleaning up the house for the new people that would be moving in?
And packing. I was packing for Mark also.
Now, what were you packing at that time?
Different things from the kitchen to the bathrooms to... I was just removing everything that was his there.
Okay. With respect to the master bedroom, was there a window seat?
Yes, there was two.
Two in that master bedroom?
Yes.
Was there some cabinet space underneath the seat?
I don't remember.
Okay. So you don't remember removing anything from the window
Cabinets?
seat? Correct.
No.
Okay.
I removed whatever was in the bedroom.
But you don't remember about the window seat?
No.
Okay. Now, if there had been magazines left by either Prince or Elton John that were perhaps in this area, then you wouldn't have known about that, correct?
Your Honor, that's argumentative.
So he's trying to say that these magazines were from Prince or Elton John. Give me a break. Give me a break.
The window seat.
No.
Okay. Now, if there had been magazines left by either Prince or Elton John that were perhaps in this area, then you wouldn't have known about that, correct?
Your Honor, that's argumentative and causes speculation.
Rephrase the question as far as the area you're referring to.
Yes. You've indicated a master bedroom, correct?
Yes.
And you've indicated that you saw on one day some magazines that you indicated had males performing sex acts.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Now, in that area, was that in the window seat area that you saw that?
Somewhere on top of the window seat, and there was a box on the floor.
Now, you don't know what happened to those magazines afterwards. You didn't see them after you saw them and actually looked at them.
I looked at them, and I went downstairs to check on my son to see what he was doing. And I didn't want him to go in that room because I didn't want him to see it. I was concerned about him viewing any of that.
Now, you actually took a look at these magazines?
Yes.
More than one?
Yes.
How many did you look at?
I just randomly flipped different pages, different magazines to see if they were all the same.
Okay, so you went through every one of the magazines?
Not every one.
But they appeared to be of the same type?
Yes.
Now, the magazines that you say were in the library, you indicated that they were, I believe in the report, that they were near the doors to the library?
Objection to the testimony.
Rephrase the question, please.
Where did you see these magazines in the library?
There was like a bar in there, that type of thing, right by there.
Were they in a box, or were they just
No, they
out
were just
loose?
out.
Were there any other magazines around?
Before there was.
Okay. Did you look at any other types of magazines, or just the
Yes.
ones you did? Did you go through all the magazines in the house?
Just the front, just like Architectural Digest, that type of magazine.
Okay, what other types of magazines did you look through?
Just on furnishings and things, just of that nature.
Now, the magazines that you had looked through regarding what you've indicated appeared to be males
Yes.
and sex acts. Were those magazines in the library, or were those more like Playboy magazines?
No, it wasn't Playboy.
You know what Playboy is?
Yes.
These magazines that were over by the bar area, where exactly were they? Were they in a neat stack, or what?
I can't remember if they were in a neat stack or not.
But you looked at those as well.
Yes, because it looked like the same thing, so I didn't want my son to go in there either.
Okay, so when you saw them, they were away from the architectural magazines that you had seen. Is that correct?
Yes, because it was the week previous that I was removing those, packing them.
You were removing what?
Magazines?
Okay. And you removed architectural magazines
Huh? Yes.
that belonged to whom?
I assumed Mark.
These magazines that you found, did you clean out the bar?
I cleaned the bar, I cleaned the library, I went through all the rooms, actually, is what I did. And my kids were removing things, and I would check up on them to make sure they were, doing
With
the
regard
job.
to the bar, did you personally clean out everything in the bar? Were there drawers and shelves behind the bar?
There was a wall unit that I remember, and I opened all the doors. My sister was telling me to go through everything because she did an inventory, and I was to remove everything that was there.
And at that time, you saw these magazines?
No.
Now, how many magazines did you see in the library, ma'am?
I'd say it was a smaller stack. It was a small stack.
And did you look through every one of those? Just glance
Not
through
every
them?
one of them.
I'm sorry?
Not every one of
How
them.
many?
Probably about 4 of them.
4 of them? You remember giving the report that you just gave a couple of days ago when you first talked to the defense on September 6, 1993?
Yes.
And do you remember telling them that you
Page,
looked...
counsel.
Page 3, first paragraph?
See if they have okay.
Did you tell them that you had looked through some magazines in the library and looked at one of them?
No.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at this report?
Objection, Your Honor, please have it communicated. I need to refresh recollection.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at the report of your interview with the defense on September 6th, a couple days ago?
Okay.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor? Okay, does that refresh your present recollection about what you did in the library?
Yes, but I keep thinking about what I saw, and I remembering back at that time, and maybe I remember a little more about it.
Okay, so you remember what?
Just looking through them because I didn't want my child to go in there and see them.
Now, your children had been in that room.
Yes, they were all over the house.
Okay. And they had been cleaning up in the room?
Yes.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, as vague as to when.
Do you know how the magazines got there?
No, I don't.
You don't know whether the defendants brought the magazines there, do you?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
No, I don't.
I have nothing further to say, Your Honor.
Mrs. Dominguez, was it your understanding that Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were living in the master bedroom? Would be living in the master
Yes.
bedroom? Not the sons.
No.
And when you worked at that house for Mr. Slotkin, is it your testimony that you and the others removed everything there that you found?
Yes.
And you even packed up furnishing magazines such as Architectural Digest?
Yes.
And those, to the best of your knowledge, belonged to Mr. Slotkin?
Yes.
You didn't find any pornographic magazines when Mr. Slotkin lived there, did you?
No, I didn't.
Is the first time that you saw these pornographic magazines after the Menendez possessions arrived at the house?
Yes.
Exactly. Bam. That's all you need. I mean, seriously. I don't know why the prosecution even got up there.
Now, do you know when it was that Prince or Elton John rented that house?
No, I don't.
And were you aware that the macho rock band U2 rented the house last?
Yes.
Did she call them a macho rock band? She did. I don't know if I would consider U2 a macho rock band, but a band nonetheless. Maybe rock. I don't know what. I guess they're kind of rock, kind of new wave.
Rented the house last.
Yes.
And when Mr. Slotkin rented this house, he rented it furnished, did he not?
Yes, he did.
And it had many personal possessions in it of his that he left for his tenants?
Yes.
And it's that in part that you were packing up?
Yes.
And was it your instructions to take everything out of the house before the Menendezes moved in?
Yes.
And with respect to Mrs. Menendez, were you there both to clean and to help unpack?
Yes.
And did you unpack similar looking boxes to the one that had the magazines and videos?
Yes.
Did they all seem to be the same type of box?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Yes, thank you. Ma'am, you just testified that you were instructed to remove everything from the house. Is that right?
Everything that they didn't purchase, the family was purchasing.
Which
But
means-
not furnishings, because they had men to remove all that.
But didn't you testify in cross-examination that the Menendezes had bought things from Mr. Slotkin, and so those things would presumably be left at the house?
Yes, it was maybe some type of furnishing that
Okay.
was left.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
How does that prove the state's point? It doesn't.
All right, thank you. Ms. Down, your excuse.
Thank you.
He had to try. I mean, I give him credit. He had to try to discredit her, but I don't think that did much for the state. I think this was good evidence for the defense, and I found her very believable.
Please seek counsel at the sidebar for one, please.
Oh, now there's a sidebar.
My name is Jessica Goldsmith, Goldsmith.
Ms. Goldsmith, how old are you?
24.
And do you know Lyle and Eric Menendez?
Yes, I do.
And how is it that you know them?
My parents were best friends with Mary Lou and Jose.
Now, Mary Lou Menendez and Jose Menendez?
Yes.
And Mary Lou, who's also known as Kitty?
Yes.
Your family knew her as Mary Lou, though, is that correct?
We always call
Her parents, best friends with Jose and Kitty. So she is a longtime family friend, probably grew up with them, and saw a lot of things in that house, I'm assuming.
her Mary Lou.
And are you going to school now? Or are you working? What are you doing?
I just finished my Master's of Social Work, and I'm a project director for the Epilepsy Foundation.
And are you nervous?
Very.
You said that your parents were best friends with Lyle and Eric's parents.
Mhm.
And do you remember a time when you met them, or did you know them all your life?
As long as I can remember, I've known them.
Okay. And do you remember when you saw them by the houses that they lived in?
Yes.
And when do you remember knowing?
In the house in Muncie.
At Muncie, New York?
Yes.
Does this house on the chart appear to be the Muncie house?
Yes, it is.
How often would you see them when they were living in Muncie?
At least once a week, if not more.
Would you see them in the evenings or weekends, or did it vary?
Varied evenings, holidays always.
What holidays did you spend with them?
We always spent Christmas and Hanukkah together.
And did you see them when they moved into New Jersey?
Yes, but not as frequently. We would still always see each other on Christmas.
So the majority of your contact would have been in the Muncie house, is that correct?
That's correct.
So, and they lived there from 1972 to 1977? When did you live in that area?
We moved the same time they did.
So you left New York around 1977? Is that yes?
Yes, a few months after they did.
And do you remember what the age differential was between you and Lyle and Eric?
Yes, Eric is 1 year younger than I am, and Lyle is 1 year older.
And do you have a younger sister?
I have a sister who's a year younger than Eric. Then it's Eric, myself, Lyle, and my older sister. We're all 1 year apart.
And your older sister's name is?
Fern.
And your younger sister's name is?
Joy.
Okay. And would all of you get together, the whole family, all the kids and both of your parents?
Yeah, always all together,
And do you remember playing with Lyle and Eric when you were young?
all the time.
And what do you remember about Lyle? What was he like as a young child?
We were always playing sports with him. He was great in sports, very, very dynamic, really charming and polite even as a kid. He was very kind. He was protective of my sisters and I.
Now, you said you had a younger sister. Did you do something in particular with your younger sister?
Yeah.
I didn't hear the question. Let's have it read back, please.
Question, now you said you had a younger sister. Did you do something in particular with your younger sister?
Be more specific. Objection sustained.
Okay. Was the Menendez a family that valued winning?
Very much, yes.
Okay. And when you played with Lyle and Eric, did you choose up teams?
We always had the same teams. Lyle and Joy would play against Fern, Eric, and myself, and Lyle would always say that Joy had to be on his team. Joy was really too little to play at the time, and he would always say that she had to be on his team because she was the best and he couldn't play without her. And it was just nice because she was really too young to play, and they always won.
Do you remember seeing the kids, not only seeing Lyle and Eric, not only in their home, but in stores and in other places outside the home?
Yes, I did.
Sustain the answer stricken.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Lyle and Eric's behavior in their home?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to observe their behavior also outside the home?
Yes, we often went shopping with them or to restaurants with them.
And do you remember an incident when you were shopping with them in a shoe store?
Yes, I do.
If I can ask the next question.
All right, the objection's overruled.
How old were you?
We all still lived in New York, so I couldn't have been older than 8.
So that would have made Lyle 9 and Eric 7 at the
At the
oldest.
oldest.
And do you think it may have been younger, or do you think that?
It may have been.
And what happened in the shoe store?
Lyle and Eric were running around like they usually did, really, really rowdy. And I was just sitting on the bench. Our parents were there, and I wasn't allowed to run around with them.
Was Mary Lou there?
Yeah, Mary Lou and my mother were there. They were trying on shoes. And
Did Mary Lou do anything to stop them from running around?
no, she didn't seem to mind.
And did anybody get hurt?
Eric got hurt. When he was running around, he tripped and hit his head on the shoe rack, and he cut his head.
And did his mother seem to be upset about that?
I'm not overly upset. I know he needed stitches. I remember my mother commenting that Mary Lou finished buying her shoes before we took him onto the hospital.
Now, was there a time when Lyle and Eric stayed at your house?
Yes, they did. They stayed with us for a week once.
Okay. Did you ever stay at their house without your parents?
No.
It just shows you the priority that she has of her children versus buying shoes.
Was Mrs. Menendez an organized, calm person, or how would you describe her?
No, she was always late and always kind of rushing around, and everything was kind of always a mess.
Did it seem to be important what the public impression was of the family?
That was always very...
Objection sustained. The answer is straight.
It's foundational, Your Honor, for the next question, if I may.
Well, you'll have to get to it.
Okay. Can you describe Eric for us?
Eric was always quiet and kind of gentle. He was very quiet. I always thought of him as a lot younger.
And you said that you were all a year apart in age, is that correct?
That's correct.
And were you also a year apart in school?
Well,
In the beginning, were you all a year apart in school?
in the beginning, we were all a year apart in school.
And then did something change?
Yeah, it was in the house in Pennington. I remember talking to Eric about school, and all of a sudden he was in the same grade as my little sister. And I knew he'd always been a grade above her, and I kept saying, of course you're not in that grade, you're a year below me. And he and I were both saying no, that he'd always been in that class. And I was really confused, and on the way home I asked my parents about it, and they said that I was correct, that Eric had been 1 year behind me, but that Mary Lou had mentioned possibly keeping him back because he wasn't a straight A student.
But
I
Lyle-
assume that's what had happened.
But Lyle and Eric were both telling you that.
Because he wasn't a straight A student? So he passed all of his classes, but because he didn't get A's in all of them, you hold him back for another year? What? Does that make sense?
Yeah, they
He
both kept telling
always
me that he was
did.
always in that class.
Was it important to be strong in that family, to be tough?
And then they lie about it. They lie and they have their kid lie about being in that class the whole time. Nope. You didn't see him in the other class. You don't know. No, he wasn't a year behind you. He's actually in your little sister's class and has been this whole time. They try to totally gaslight people about their lies or with their lies.
Definitely.
And how is it that you know that?
One time back in the Muncie house, I was with Lyle, and the way the house was set up there, they had a staircase going down like this, and then a landing, and then another staircase continuing, so that if you were up in their living room, you could look down over the landing.
So you. She just moved
Oh, I'm
away.
sorry.
Okay. So if you were in the living room, you'd be looking down a flight of stairs, a landing, and another flight of stairs. Is that correct?
Correct. And Lyle was hanging from the living room over the stairs. He was hanging on like this.
About how old would he have been?
Again, it was in the New York house, so I guess he couldn't have been older than 9. And he got scared, and he asked his dad to take him down. And his father said, no, you'll stay up there till you learn to be strong and learn to be a man. And Lyle started to cry. And I remember it because I'd never seen him cry before that. And his father started to jab him in the stomach and say, you'll stay up there till you learn not to cry.
And did he stay up there?
For a while, at least. I don't remember how he got down.
Was he crying?
Yes, he was.
What was his father doing while he was crying?
Just poking him in the stomach and saying, you'll learn not to cry. You'll stay up there till you're not afraid and you'll be a man.
And where was his mother?
She was standing there next to me.
Did you feel that she was dominated by Jose?
Sustained.
Did she say anything to him, like, let him down, he's crying, he's scared?
I don't remember her saying anything.
Okay. In observing them in other situations, did it seem that he had all the power in the family and she was afraid to say anything?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Was she a shy, reserved person?
No. She was strong herself. She was very strong.
And did you ever see her say anything after that to Jose about what he had done to Lyle?
Oh, no, she didn't seem to mind it.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Wow.
Examination on behalf of Eric Menendez.
Parents talk. As far as parents go, these are probably some of the worst. I mean, yeah, just stay up there until you can learn how to not cry and be a man as I jab you in the stomach and you're trying to hold on for dear life. Awesome. Awesome dad. Awesome parenting. Not.
Ms. Goldsmith, was Lyle, did Lyle appear to be important to Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
Yes, he did.
Okay. What about Eric? How would you compare how important Eric was to them?
Well, they never really mentioned him quite as much. They talked about Lyle and his sports a lot, and I didn't even know that Eric was really such a big athlete until much later because I never really heard them talk about it.
Okay, did Eric seem to be as important in the family as Lyle?
Lyle stood out more, seemed to get more attention.
Okay, thank you.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Ms. Goldsmith, your parents were best friends with the Menendezes, is that right?
Yes, they were.
And how far away did you live from them?
In which house?
The Muncie house?
As I remember, not more than 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes away.
And you would spend a lot of time over at the Menendez house playing with the defendants?
Yes.
How many times a week would you go over there and spend time?
It varied. It did vary. At least once a week we would be there.
This once a week, would you be there for several hours playing?
Yeah, we'd go over in the evening sometimes. And we'd play, I remember we would play soccer outside as it got dark.
So your parents would let you play outside with them as well?
Yes.
Now, how old were you when you used to go and play with the defendants in this case? What was the range in your age?
Well, like I said, as far back as I remember, we were friends with them, and I moved when I was 8, so from the time I was little until I was 8 years old.
Okay, I'm sorry, you did what when you were 8?
We moved out of the house when we were 8. We all moved out of New York. So until I was 8, I was playing with them. And then after that, we played occasionally still when we were older.
You would see them at Christmas time?
Yeah.
You would not see the defendants after you were 8 very often then?
Not too often. If they had a match near us, sometimes we would go.
At some point, did you learn of the deaths of the Menendez parents?
Yes, I did.
How long had it been that you had seen the defendants before, or at the time that you heard that Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were killed?
I hadn't seen them since the Christmas before they moved out to California.
That'd be 1985?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
So you didn't see them for the previous 4 years then?
Correct.
You didn't see them when they became adults?
Not after they moved to California, I didn't.
What does this matter?
You said that Lyle was a dynamic person, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And that the defendants were rowdy when you would go to restaurants and shopping, they would misbehave?
Yes.
They'd run around and would they yell and scream and carry on?
Yes, they would.
We've heard from other people that they were very good and they always sat still and were attentive to their dad and didn't run around rambunctiously. I don't know. Maybe when the dad wasn't there, they would do this. Not sure.
Would you say that they were kind of wild when they were that age?
They were very wild.
Now, at this shopping excursion, Mrs. Menendez actually had to take Eric Menendez to the hospital?
I believe so because he got stitches.
Now, you indicated that it was important to be tough in the Menendez household. That'd be fair to say?
Yes, it would.
And there were only boys in that household, correct?
Yes.
And you had 2 sisters?
Yes.
Now, you talked about a situation where Lyle was hanging from something.
Yes.
What was it that he was hanging from?
He was hanging, the living room of the floor above, he was actually hanging from the ground from up there. It was sort of like a ledge, the best I could describe it.
Was he hanging in the stairwell or
Over the stairs.
over the stairs? So how many feet was he above the stairs?
A few feet above the stairs. I don't know exactly.
Okay. And his father said you can stay up there until he stopped crying because he started to cry?
Until you stop crying and learn not to be afraid, yes.
Okay. And how long were you there that night? Was that an evening that you went to visit?
I don't recall. The incident just sticks out in my mind. I don't recall how long I was there or why I was there.
At some point, you left that night, I take it.
That would be correct.
Was Lyle still hanging up there when you left?
No, he was not.
Okay. Was his father there with him when he was hanging from this ledge?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see him come down anyway?
I don't recall how he came down.
Okay, but he's only a couple feet above the stairs.
Yeah, but if he let go, he would have to fall down the stairs to get down.
Unless he landed on a stair.
I guess he could have.
Okay. I have nothing further now.
Can you redirect?
Definitely, I would have been scared.
Full name, spell your last name.
Faith Goldsmith, Goldsmith.
Okay, let's see if we can move that microphone a little bit adjusted for her. Right?
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Mrs. Goldsmith, were you friends with Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
Yes, I was.
And you knew her as Mary Lou, is that correct?
Right.
And you knew him as?
Jose.
And do you know their 2 children, Lyle and Eric?
Yes, I do.
Were Mr. and Mrs. Menendez very good friends of yours?
They were very dear friends.
Were they?
I'm assuming this is Jessica Goldsmith's mother because she said they were very good friends with the Menendez parents, or yeah, the adults. So this is Faith Goldsmith. So I'm assuming they're related, Jessica and Faith.
Among your closest friends?
Yes, they were.
And to your knowledge, were you their closest friends?
To my knowledge, yes, we were very close friends.
When did you first get to know them?
I met Mary Lou when she started teaching in the Bronx, where I taught. I would say it was probably 1965, 1966.
And did you continue to have contact with her and her family over the next period of time?
Yes.
Until when?
We were in very close contact with them until we moved to Jersey. We moved to Jersey at about the same time they did. We remained in contact, but less frequently.
Okay.
When they moved to California, we had very little contact with them.
Let's deal with the early years, when you first were teaching together. Did either of you have children at that time?
No.
And during that period of time before you had children, how often would you see Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
I would see Mary Lou every day, and we spent most of the weekend with, as a couple, my husband and I spent a good part of the weekend together.
Once you had children, did you continue to spend time together?
There was a period of about a year when Mary Lou and Jose lived in Chicago. We did not see them at that time. When they moved back to New York to the Muncie home, we then saw them again frequently.
And when you say frequently, did you see them every week?
Several times a week. Mary Lou and the children several times a week. Jose on weekends. Not every weekend, but frequently.
Were you in their home?
Yes.
Frequently?
Very frequently, yes.
And were they in your home?
Yes.
And did you go places with them?
Yes.
With both Mr. and Menendez and the children, or more with this Mrs. Menendez and the children?
Mostly with Mary Lou and the children, my children and her children.
And then at some point,
It's interesting that this woman is a witness for the defense. So and they were best friends, her and Mary Lou. So I wonder what she's going to say about Mary Lou and the things that she saw in that house. It's interesting because she's on the defense witness list and not testifying for the state. So let's see what she says.
you moved from New York?
Yes, we moved to New Jersey.
And approximately when was that?
1978.
And did they move around the same time?
I believe they moved about 6 months before we did.
And when you were both living in New Jersey, how often did you see each other then?
We saw each other less frequently. And as the years went on, it was less and less frequently. We did see each other. It was our tradition to see each other every Christmas. We always spent Christmas together.
Did you spend Hanukkah together also?
When we lived in New York, we did, yes.
And were you there for birthdays, or did they come to your house for your children's birthdays, or do you recall?
I remember when the children were younger, they're coming to our house for birthdays. I remember one birthday for Eric that we were there.
But other than that, you did not go to Eric and Lyle's birthdays that you recall?
Not that I can recall.
You said when you met her, when you met Mrs. Menendez, you were both teaching, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And are you still teaching?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been teaching?
I returned to teaching about 8 years ago. I had stopped to raise my children, and I returned about 8 years ago.
And what level do you teach?
5th grade.
And have you always taught? Have you always taught?
No, not allowed.
Have you always taught 5th grade?
No, I taught 3rd grade, as did Mary Lou in the Bronx.
Now, did you, were you around when the children were small? Were you seeing each other during that period of time?
Yes.
Who had a child first, you or Mary Lou?
I did. Fern is 6 months older than Lyle.
And I believe your daughter testified yesterday. She indicated the children are all 1 year apart, yours, theirs,
Right.
who's theirs.
Starting with
All right, so I was right. It's Faith Goldsmith is Jessica Goldsmith's mother, the woman who we just saw. It's her mother on the stand, and she's about to go through the daughters or the children again.
And I believe your daughter testified yesterday. She indicated the children are all 1 year apart, yours, theirs,
right.
who's theirs.
Starting with Joy and then with Fern and the others in between.
Okay. And you had 3 girls.
Yes.
When Lyle was born, did Mary Lou stay home with him, or did she return to work?
No, she returned to work very soon after Lyle was born.
Within 4 or 5 weeks, something like that?
I'm going to say 6 weeks, but that's what I would say, 6 weeks.
Okay. And on weekends, would Mary Lou and Jose stay home with their baby? Or
No, they decided to take up skiing, and they would bring the boys to Jose's mother.
The boys. Now,
Oh, wait, okay. I referred to them as Lyle and Eric. They would bring Lyle and Eric to
well,
Jose.
was this before Eric was born? Or
Oh, no, just Lyle. They would bring Lyle to Mrs. Menendez. She lived in Jersey, and they would leave Lyle there Friday evening and then pick him up Sunday on the way back.
So she had child.
They really did not want to be parents, it seems to me. They were very self-centered and yeah, that's all I'm going to say. They didn't even spend their weekends with the baby. They wanted to drop the baby off at grandma's so they could go take up skiing with a newborn in the house.
Childcare during the week while she was teaching.
Yes.
And then And they would be gone on the weekend skiing?
Yes.
And was that virtually every weekend?
It was very frequently, obviously during the skiing season.
Okay. Is very frequently to you once every 2 or 3 months, or almost every weekend?
Almost every weekend, to the best of my recollection.
Okay. And did she have a discussion with you with regard to the child care situation?
Yes, she did.
And can you tell me what that was?
And your response?
You're on this. You want to hear, or do you want it at the sidebar?
All right, let's go to the sidebar. All right, you may re-ask the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you have a discussion with Mary Lou with regard to what she wanted to do about the child care situation for her young son?
Yes.
And Lyle was born in January, is that correct?
Yes.
So this would have been when he was just an infant, is that correct?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
Okay. And what was her proposal with regard to child care for Lyle?
She said that it didn't seem to make sense to, the arrangement that they had did not seem to make sense to her, in that she was gone a good part of the day when she was working, would just come home and see Lyle in the evening. It was very hectic coming home after work and taking care of him. She thought it would be a better arrangement to have Lyle stay with his grandmother, and that she and Jose could visit him Friday en route to skiing, and then Sunday en route home. And she wanted to know what I thought about that.
And what did you tell her you thought about that?
I told her I thought it was an awful idea.
Wait, what? She wanted to have the grandma keep them? Let's revisit that. I need to hear that again.
She said that it didn't seem to make sense to, the arrangement that they had did not seem to make sense to her, in that she was gone a good part of the day when she was working, would just come home and see Lyle in the evening, and it was very hectic coming home after work and taking care of him. She thought it would be a better arrangement to have Lyle stay with his grandmother, and that she and Jose could visit him Friday en route to skiing, and then Sunday en route home. And she wanted to know what I thought about that.
And what did you tell her you thought about that?
I told her I thought it was an awful idea.
And did Jose have any input on this?
She told me Jose thought it was an awful idea.
So originally, Kitty, apparently Kitty works. I don't know what she did, but apparently Kitty, or Mary Lou, or whatever you want to call her, she worked during the day. So she didn't see the boys during the day, but then she saw them when she got home. And apparently it was really hectic and chaotic to have children. Go figure. And so then but then Jose and Kitty decide, well, how about we spend our entire weekends away from the boys, away from Lyle when he's an infant, a newborn, and let's go skiing, and we'll just leave him at your mom's. So, okay, fine. So Lyle's home all week. They drop Lyle off for the weekend. They pick him up every Sunday, and then Lyle's back for the week. Now they want to keep Lyle there the entire time and only see them Friday evening on their way up to go skiing, or on their way to go skiing, and then Sunday evening home. Now, I ask you folks out there, I'm not a parent. I have dogs. Those are my babies. And I have kind of stepkids. We're not married, but through that relationship, my boyfriend has 2 daughters. But I wouldn't want to just give them up for the whole week, I mean, as it is now, we want to see them more, but um what I'm saying is, you want to see your kids. You want them in your life. You want them around more. You're not going to be like, I'm going to push them away and my mom can raise them and I'll just see them 2 times per week. Real briefly, in and out. Who does that? These people did not want to be parents. And once they had kids, they controlled every single thing that they did. It's so sad.
I take it that Lyle did not go then to his grandmother's, is that correct?
Correct.
Was Mary Lou a timid kind of person, shy, or was she something else?
Absolutely not timid nor shy.
Was she fearless?
Very fearless.
Did you see incidents in which you could tell that she was a very brave or courageous person?
Yes, I did.
And was this something you admired?
Yes, I admired it.
Okay. And can you tell me what you saw that led you to believe that she was fearless?
There was one incident where she and I had taken our children to a museum in New York, and at one point there was some sort of a show in the basement of the museum, and there were maybe 50 or 75 other people in the museum in that basement, and somebody threw a couple of firebombs into the room, and everybody drew back and just, what do we do? And then it was Mary Lou that ran up and grabbed the firebombs and stamped on them, and then started screaming at the people that had thrown it in.
Okay.
I mean, just everyone was amazed that someone had that courage to go up and do that.
And was there another incident involving her car while she was teaching?
Yes.
Biggest timeline.
Can you tell me about what year we're talking about?
I stopped teaching in the Bronx in 1967, so somewhere before 1967.
When did you first meet her?
That's 66, 65 or 66.
Okay, so that's the time period we're talking about, somewhere between
Somewhere,
65 and
right,
67.
right.
Okay.
I don't know exactly. We were...
This is 1965, 66?
Yes, this is just character evidence. I believe it's a very brief incident, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
You said that you saw her as being fearless. Did you see that same character trait translate into her as a parent?
Yes, yes.
And do you consider yourself a protective mother?
Objection relevant.
Sustained.
Was Mary Lou a protective mother?
No.
And did you see specific things that led you to believe that she was not a protective mother?
Yes.
And can you tell me what things you saw that led you to believe that she wasn't protective?
There were many incidents that I could recall. There was one incident, their house in Muncie had a porch with a railing, and it had a thin railing. And
Excuse me, I have a photograph here, which we previously marked as 154. Does that appear to be the Muncie railing?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it has that narrow ledge there.
Like how high up off the ground was that?
I really don't know how high off the ground it was. I have no measurement that I could come to. I know that Lyle was walking on this ledge, and I screamed out to Mary Lou to get him down. It seemed to me that if he were to fall, he could hurt himself, and that the ledge was too narrow for him to be walking on. And she just said, he's not going to fall. He doesn't fall when he walks on the ground. He's not going to fall on the ledge.
Now, how old would Lyle have been at that time?
5. That's a guess, really.
Okay. And was there another incident where he was walking near a culvert?
Objection, this is leading intervention.
Roll.
Should I answer the question? I have a vague recollection of Lyle again walking where there was a deep drop. And in this particular incident, my husband Peter, who is less protective than I, said to Mary Lou, get him off of there. He can really hurt himself if he falls. And she just said he's not going to fall, and let him go on.
Were there any incidents that come to mind with regard to, well, let me strike it if I may. Was it important to Mary Lou and to Jose that their children be tough?
I certainly got that impression, yes.
And was there an incident you saw with regard to Lyle and a swim class that demonstrated that?
Objection, biggest time.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Biggest time.
If you can be more precise as to when.
Okay. Do you remember an incident with the swim class with Lyle?
Yes, I do.
And about how old was he at that time?
It was the first swim lesson that he had. He was involved, and my daughter Fern and Jessica. I would say that he was maybe 6 years old. I'm going to guess at that age.
Okay. And what happened with that incident?
Our class was scheduled the first thing in the morning, and the pool was cold, and when they went in, Lyle came out crying. He said he didn't want to go in because the water was too cold. And Mary Lou just said, you have to go in. And he kept trying to come out, and she kept pushing him back in. Said, you'll get used to it.
And did the coach seem to think that this was appropriate behavior? Or
Objection, false speculation.
Sustained.
did the coach make some comments to Mary Lou to which she responded?
Yes.
Okay. And what did the coach say?
The coach said to stop pushing him. She said, what do you want to do, raise a champion? And Mary Lou said, yes, of course.
Was there an incident with Eric in a real estate office which reflected a lack of caring or protectiveness?
Yes.
Objection, biggest time.
All right, I'm sure you'll specify that.
Yes. How old was Eric at this time?
It was when they were looking for the Muncie home. So do we know what year they moved into the home in Muncie? And then
If Eric was born in 1970 and they moved into Muncie in 1972.
Then Eric was 2 years old at the time. We were in a realtor's office, their family and my family, and the office was located on Route 59, which is a major street, major highway almost. And we were talking to the realtor, and somebody came carrying Eric in, and they had to stop the traffic. He had been out on Route 59
And how
and
did
wandered off onto the street.
how did Mary Lou react to that? Did she seem distraught or upset?
No.
Was there an incident involving Eric and the cemetery when he was quite young?
Yes.
How old would he have been?
I'm not certain.
Less than 10?
I would think so.
Okay. And what was the incident with the cemetery?
Jose had taken Lyle and Eric to a cemetery when it was dark, and
Why?
And then on some signal, apparently, he and Lyle ran out of the cemetery and left Eric there. And Eric was crying, and they wouldn't go back and take him out for a while.
And was there any explanation given for why this would have been good behavior, good parenting?
They said that Eric had to learn not to be afraid.
Did you see times when Lyle and Eric got hurt, physically hurt, where they had injuries?
Yes. Eric, we went in a shoe store, and Eric fell and cut his, I think it was around over here, and he had to get stitches.
And how did Mary Lou react to that?
She was not upset about it. The shoe clerk and I were urging her to have it seen by a doctor because we thought it needed stitches.
She finished buying her shoes?
She finished buying her shoes. And
was success, the children's success and the parents' success, important in that?
I mean, those things, those examples right there say it all. They were not engaged parents, not in the sense that they had their children's best interest in mind. They were engaged in parenting when it benefited them, but not when the boys needed parents.
In that family?
yes, very important.
And was there an incident with regard to Eric and the class he was in that demonstrated that to you? Was Eric held back?
Mary Lou asked me several times, Mary Lou told me several times that she thought that she should hold Eric back because he wasn't at the top of his class. And she wanted to know my opinion about that. I kept telling her that I didn't think being at the top of the class was...
Sustained.
Okay. So Mary Lou was concerned that Eric was not at the top of his class.
Right.
Did she say what she was thinking about doing about that?
She wanted to hold him back. She felt that if he were older, he could do better.
And at some point, did you discover that Eric was in the same grade as the daughter that you have who's a year younger than him?
Yes, and yes.
And did you talk to her about that?
Well, she had mentioned, we were just sort of reviewing, it was the start of the year perhaps, and we were just saying, this child's in 5th grade, this child's in 6th grade. And when I mentioned the grade that Eric was in, she said, no, what are you talking about? He's in, and I believe it was 6th grade. And I said, no, he's a year ahead of Joy, that's not possible. And she said, he was always in the same grade as Joy, they were always in the same class. And I just dropped it at that, realizing that she had followed through on her plan to keep it back.
And then
Gaslighting the friends, the family member, the family friend, the best friend. She's gaslighting, saying, no, they've always been in the same class. I don't know what you're talking about. What? How did these people get away with this crap for so long, acting like such entitled individuals?
and she denied it to you?
Yes.
Did she contact you did she contact you at some point in time to see if you could get some placement tests for the boys?
To get some standardized tests that the boys were going to be taking.
Now what were these tests?
I don't remember whether they were the CAT tests or the MET tests, but they're tests that are often used to help place a child in a particular class, whether it be a fast-moving class or a slow-moving class.
And did she explain to you why she wanted those tests?
She wanted to make sure that they would do well.
And did you get those tests for her?
No, I did not.
Why not? Was it illegal to get those tests?
I don't know.
Had
I
she?
don't know.
Was there some reason why she asked you for those tests rather than getting them herself?
Sustained.
It's not speculative. She can say. She knows that only she.
Unless it was said by Mrs. Menendez.
Did Mrs. Menendez ask you specifically to get some tests?
Yes, she did.
And did she indicate that she couldn't get them herself?
Yes, it's because I had my New Jersey certification, and she did not. She told me that if you had a New Jersey certification, you could get these tests.
This is a teaching certification?
Yes.
And I believe you said you didn't get the
I
tests?
did not get them for her.
Why?
Sustained.
Was Mary Lou an affectionate, demonstrative mother?
No, she was not.
You said that winning was important in that family, succeeding. Did she demonstrate that in terms of anything about food, what the kids were to eat?
There was one period of time that Mary Lou told me that she was giving Lyle and Eric high-protein breakfasts of steak or fish. And I don't remember now whether it was because it was going to improve their athletic ability or their academic ability, but she had read somewhere that a high-protein diet would help them. So they had this for breakfast.
Because it was geared to their performance, she
Yes.
believed? Were you aware of what their schedule was, the boys' schedule, in terms of during the period of time they were playing tennis?
At different times, I was.
And were there periods when they were getting up very early in the morning to play tennis before school?
There was a period of time, to the best of my knowledge, that they were getting up at about 5 and playing, coaching in tennis. Somehow, I think it was in Philadelphia, before school, and then would come to school, and then after school would get tennis lessons, I believe, in New Brunswick.
Did they seem to have unstructured time where they could just go hang out with the kids in the neighborhood, or did they have a different life?
They did not. All of their time was structured, and Mary Lou specifically said that it would be unwise for them to have friends, that it would take too much time away from the things that were important. And she would say that if they became friends, they would lose the competitive edge in tennis if they had to play against a friend.
So it was better for them to have no friends.
At this time in their life, she said when they were older in college, it would be time for them to make friends.
Did you ever drive with Mary Lou?
That will socially stunt you for life if you don't have friends at younger ages. Like you need to have the ability to socialize with your peers. And right there, I mean, we already knew that they weren't socializing with their peers because every second that they had of free time, they're doing tennis or swimming or whatever. But now we know for sure that the Menendez parents were like, nope, no friends because it's going to distract you from your sport. I don't like it.
Yes,
Was that an exciting experience?
it was it was often frightening. She drove 85, 90 miles, if the road permitted it. She went as fast as she could, recklessly.
Was there an incident in which she had two of her nieces, Kathy and Diane, visiting with her, and you made a trip to Washington or to New York?
We went from New York to Washington, yes.
And did you drive with them on that occasion?
Yes.
And is there anything memorable about that drive?
It was, we just seemed, at 85 miles an hour, I just stopped looking at the speedometer. It was just frightening. It was very frightening.
Did you think that
So not only did Kitty not protect her children, she wasn't a protective mother when they would do things like walk on ledges, but she would also put them in danger every time she got behind the wheel and drove recklessly at 85, 90 miles an hour down the road.
that Mary Lou and Jose were the kind of people that behind what they'd say behind your back, they'd say to your face, or did they seem to have two different standards of behavior? What they would do, how they would talk about somebody. Can I finish the question? Thank you. How they would talk about somebody privately versus how they would behave toward them in a public setting.
If you could rephrase the question in light of her own observations.
Okay. Did you specifically have the opportunity to hear how either Mary Lou or Jose or both talked about Lyle's girlfriend, Jamie?
Yes, they were both displeased that Lyle was seeing Jamie. They didn't think that she was an appropriate girlfriend for him.
Were they mildly critical or very critical?
Very critical.
And then did you have an opportunity to see them with Jamie?
Yes, I did on one occasion.
Okay. And how did Mary Lou behave toward Jamie when she saw her in person?
I saw them, they were leaving New Jersey and flying back. They were already living in California and had come into New Jersey. I don't remember for what reason, but they were saying goodbye.
Can you sort of give us an idea what year this was?
It was the year that they moved to California. It was just
They moved in 1986. Does that help?
1986.
Okay.
And when they were leaving, Mary Lou kissed Jamie and hugged her goodbye.
Had you ever seen her kiss or hug her own son?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah.
Were Mary Lou and Jose competitive?
Extremely competitive.
Did you ever know anybody in your life who was more competitive?
Never. No, they were the most competitive people I've met.
And of the two of them, who was the most competitive? Or were they on a par?
They were both extremely competitive. Very competitive.
Were they both tough?
Very tough. Mary Lou was an extremely strong, tough, self-confident, powerful person.
More so even than him, maybe?
Sometimes more so than Jose, yes.
Wow.
And was one of the ways that you observed their competitive spirit in the
I know I'm saying wow a lot. I have no other words. That's crazy. So sometimes Mary Lou or Kitty was worse than Jose, going off with anger and having these fits. And she was more powerful and more dominant, a more domineering demeanor than Jose sometimes.
Powerful person.
more so even than him, maybe?
Sometimes more so than Jose, yes.
And was one of the ways that you observed their competitive spirit in the games that you would play when your families got together? Monopoly, bridge, that type of thing?
Yes.
And was winning important to them?
Winning was very important. They cheated, and especially Mary Lou would cheat, whether it would be at Monopoly, whatever, she would cheat. They were going to teach us to play bridge. Peter and I did not know how to play bridge, so we had 4 open hands. And Mary Lou was cheating, and I kept telling her that it was ridiculous for her to be cheating at a game that didn't matter, we were just learning. But she was cheating.
And what would happen when you would call her on the cheating? Would she admit to it?
She was caught cheating on a fake game with all the cards up. Like, what a what a dummy. Why would you don't basically show your hand? Don't show your hand that pun intended that you're going to cheat in the game that everyone can see your cards. So ridiculous.
Would or
No, no,
she would deny it?
no.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Examination on behalf of Eric Menendez. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Ellen.
I'm sorry. I have one more question.
Yeah, one more question.
Mrs. Goldsmith, your family spent a lot of time together. Did you ever let the Menendez parents take care of your children?
No, I never did. I just never felt that it would have been Mary Lou, and I never felt that she would have watched them carefully. And she often asked me, because I would watch her children, sometimes just for a couple of hours, one time for a week when they went away on a business trip. And she often would say, you'll watch my boys, how come you leave your girls with me? And I just made excuses. I would not have felt comfortable leaving my children with her.
Why?
She just was not, she didn't seem to be aware of keeping an eye on them.
Based on her, I'm sorry.
Should I answer?
She wasn't an attentive mother. She didn't pay attention to her own kids. Why would she pay attention to someone else's?
She did not watch them carefully. I knew that if they were there, they would be free to do almost anything. There would be nobody watching them. And at a certain age, I felt the children had to be watched.
Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Her best friend wouldn't leave her children with her. What does that say to you? Her best friend would not leave her children alone with Kitty. Just Kitty, even. Not even Jose. We're not even talking about Jose. We're talking about Kitty. Oops, cross. I mean, that says a lot. That says a lot. All right, we're going to go into cross-examination now with for Faith Goldsmith here. Let's see. Kuriyama.
Mrs. Goldsmith, why were you friends with Mary Lou?
I loved Mary Lou, and we had good times together. She was bright, interesting conversations. She was a good friend. She was a fun person to be with.
Was she a sweet lady?
Very.
Now, you said you first met her in 1965, was that it?
I believe I said 65 or 66.
And you indicated that you were both teaching in the Bronx in New York,
Yes,
and you both taught the third grade?
correct.
Was Mary Lou, or Kitty, as she was also known, was she married to Jose at that time?
Yes, she was.
And during this period of time, was Jose going to school?
Yes, he was.
So you knew them before they had become successful, or Mr. Menendez had become a successful businessman.
That's correct.
And you and your husband, Peter, were, as you stated, very dear friends of the Menendezes?
Yes,
You said that you would see Mary Lou Menendez every day at school, and you would even spend the weekends with with Mr. and Mrs. Menendez, with your husband.
that's correct.
Okay. Did you have classrooms right next door to each other?
Diagonally across, very close to each other.
Did you
yes.
have lunch with her?
I'm sure I did, though I don't recall it, but I'm sure we did.
And was your husband a teacher also?
No, he's not.
Okay. What did your husband do at that time?
He's a manufacturer's representative.
During that period of time?
Yes,
And he became close friends with Jose Menendez.
very close friends.
They were like brothers.
Yes.
Now, Jose, during that period of time, what was he like?
Could you be more specific?
Yes, during the time that Jose, before the children were born, any of the children, both yours and the Menendezes, you indicated that Jose was going to school.
Yes.
And that you and your family would spend a lot of time with the Menendezes. What was Mr. Menendez like during that period of time?
He was a fun person to be with. He was bright. He was fun. He was always a fun person to be with. You were always laughing when you were with him.
Did he have a good sense of humor?
Excellent sense of humor.
Now, when the children came, first of all, you had a daughter,
Correct.
Was that in 1967?
Correct.
And then the Menendezes had their son, Lyle, in January of 1968?
I believe that's correct.
Now, Mrs. Menendez was working just shortly before Lyle was born, correct?
Yes.
And had you worked with her from about 1965 until 1968 when they had Lyle Menendez?
No, I stopped working in May of 1967.
That's when you had your daughter?
Correct.
And Mrs. Menendez continued to work?
Correct.
And did she work right up to the time when she had Lyle Menendez?
Short. She stopped working, I imagine, shortly before.
And after she had Lyle Menendez, you indicated that she went back to work after about 6 weeks? Is that right?
Mr. Kuriyama, there is a mic on your stand, and every time you are at the podium, you I don't know if he's still around or not, but I'm speaking to the past Mr. Kuriyama. Every time you move, we hear it. You're leaning on it, and we hear all that crackling. You're turning your pages right in front of it very loudly. We hear it.
I said I thought it was about that amount of time.
Now, was Jose Menendez still going to school at this time, going to college?
I believe it was either shortly before or shortly after Lyle was born that he graduated and started working.
Now, when Jose Menendez was going to school, he was working part-time at Waldbaum's, is that right?
Correct.
What is that?
Supermarket.
So he's working part-time as what?
In the office.
And he was an accounting major?
Yes.
They weren't wealthy, were they, at that time?
No, they were not.
And Mrs. Menendez had to work. I mean, she had
Yes,
to.
she did.
You didn't hold it against her that she had to go to work and have a babysitter sit her son during that period of time, did you?
No, I probably felt sorry that she had to do that.
But yet she went out and she earned a living.
Yes, she did.
Now, during this period of time, when she was working, you had indicated that she and Jose took up skiing.
Correct.
And they would bring Lyle to the grandmother's house. Is that
Correct.
Maria Menendez?
Yes.
And that they would take Lyle to the grandmother's house and ski and then come back on Sunday for
Correct.
the weekend?
Correct.
And this happened fairly regularly, is that right? During the skiing season?
Yes.
During the winter? Did they do that? Did they leave on trips like that on the weekends in the off-season, when it wasn't skiing season? Or
Not that I know of.
They'd spend time with their son during the weekends then, and you would spend time with their family during those weekends.
At that time, they were living in New York. We were already living in Rockland County. We saw them far less frequently, so I'm not really aware of what they were doing on the weekends.
Okay. Now, at some point after Eric Menendez was born, did you have a lot of contact with the family during that period of time?
I believe Eric was born, I believe, and they moved to Chicago very shortly thereafter. We did not see them when they were in Chicago. So from about the time that he was born until he was 2, we did not have contact with them. When they moved back to New York, then we did.
So there was about, a 2
All the moving around is confusing to me that the Menendez family did. They were in New York, New Jersey, California, Chicago.
year period that you did not see the Menendezes after Lyle was born?
After Eric was
After
born.
Eric was born. And then, was it about 1972 that you saw them again?
If that was the year that they moved back to Muncie, I've lost track of,
Okay,
of the time here.
So you remember the Muncie house?
Yes.
And the photograph that you looked at with the little ledge, was that the Muncie house?
Yes.
Is it a little bench just above?
It looks as if it is, yes.
There appears to be a little bench just above the planter. Was that the ledge you're talking about?
I'm going to start about this ledge here.
Okay. There appears to be a little chipmunk or something on that ledge. Is that right?
Yes.
And that ledge is a little bit higher than the chair that's to the left side of the photograph. Is that right?
Trying to make it seem like it's not dangerous that they were walking. Get out of here, Mr. Kuriyama.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And you're afraid that young Lyle might fall off that ledge?
Now going down, can I just
Yes.
see the picture again? Not that he would fall down this way, that he would fall down the other way down. There was somewhat of a drop going this way.
Okay.
Here there's not much of a drop.
Right.
The
So there's
other way.
plants on the other side.
I don't know if there was at that time. I don't know.
Now, Lyle Menendez at that time was how old? You say he was about 5 or 6?
That was my guess.
Did he fall off that ledge? Did you
No.
see him the day that you were worried? And Mrs. Menendez said, "Don't worry, he's not going to fall."
No, he did not fall.
In fact, they were very athletic young boys.
Yes, they
very
were.
rambunctious.
Yes, they were.
Very noisy and wild.
Yes.
Now, and you had sweet girls, correct?
That doesn't mean you let them go hanging off the roof.
They were sweet boys. They were sweet girls. I mean,
But they weren't.
Although, to be honest, based on stories that my boyfriend tells me, it's perfectly normal that boys do this. However, just the fact that, Kitty wasn't alarmed by the fact that they were doing it is what's in question here.
Athletes. Your girls
they're
were.
not athletes.
And Mrs. Menendez said, "Don't worry, he's not going to fall," and he didn't fall, did he?
Correct.
Would it be fair to say that Kitty Menendez spent most of her time driving her sons to various lessons and to school?
Yes.
She spent the whole day from early morning until nighttime driving her sons to and from lessons and to and from school. Would that be fair to say?
Well, not when they were in school, obviously.
Pardon me?
Not when they were in school, obviously. You said all day?
Yes.
It would be after school mostly.
Wouldn't she get up before 5 o'clock to take her? I believe you said that the sons would take lessons from about 5 in the morning,
At one period of time, yes.
and you were personally aware of that period of time.
She told me that she was doing that.
And she
This was when they were living in Jersey, I believe.
personally got up and took her son to his lessons.
Yes.
And were you told that she took her sons to these lessons and sports events from morning until night? She had to drive around town?
Yes.
That she had to go from Princeton to New Brunswick before school?
After school.
Before school to take Lyle to his lessons, tennis lessons?
No, she went to New Brunswick after school.
Were there times that they would practice? I believe you indicated that they practiced before school.
Yes, but the way I understood it, the way Mary Lou told it to me, they were going to Philadelphia, I believe it was, before school, and New Brunswick after school.
Okay. So they would go from Princeton to Philadelphia?
I believe so.
That would be the 5 o'clock tennis lesson?
Yes.
How far is
I
that?
have no idea.
But that's from Princeton, New Jersey to another state. I mean, it had to be. You have no idea?
I have no idea.
Okay.
What? They're going from New Jersey to somewhere in Pennsylvania for lessons at 5 in the morning. So what time do you have to get up? Were these kids ever asleep? Did they ever get any sleep? Probably not.
Did she indicate to you that after she would go from Princeton to Philadelphia, that she would have to go back to Princeton to pick up her other son and take him to school?
No.
You don't recall that?
Are you saying from New Jersey to Philadelphia?
Right, and then back to Princeton to take her son to school?
No.
And it was your understanding that she had to take her sons to practice after school as well?
Yes.
Now, when Jose was home and he interacted with you and your husband, Peter, and your family, did he appear to be relaxed around you?
Very relaxed, yes.
He had known you and your husband and had been friends with you for years, and he was comfortable?
Yes.
Now, when the sons came, when the two defendants were born, did the focus turn on the sons as far as the attention?
Yes.
Sustain the answer, Trey.
At some point, did Mr. and Mrs. Menendez focus almost their entire attention on their sons?
Yes.
Okay, about when was that?
I would say that when they started to join the soccer team or the swimming team, which must have been about age 7, somewhere around then.
And did Jose always tell you that he wanted the best for his boys?
Yes.
And did he kid around with you that it was better to have boys than girls?
Yes.
Well,
Was he-
we know why. And that's disgusting that you would even bring that up, prosecution, because that just makes me think he liked boys better than girls.
Good father at that time?
Disgusting.
He was certainly spent a lot of time with the children, yes.
When he would come home from work, would he hug and kiss his young boys?
I was not often there when he came home at that time.
But did you see that?
I saw him hug and kiss his boys.
Did Jose tell you that the most important thing to him was the boys?
Yes.
Did he try to instill in their sons that they should be the best they could be?
Yes.
And likewise, did Mary Lou tell you that she wanted her boys to have the best and to achieve?
Yes.
Now, you had indicated that you had a lot of fun when you were with Mary Lou.
Yes.
And she had a way of making you feel good about yourself
Yes.
and making you feel that you could do anything.
Yes.
Now, with regard to the swimming lesson that you said that you were present for, where Lyle Menendez came out and said it was too cold, and Mrs. Menendez said, go back in. Remember that incident?
Yes.
Did the coach tell Mrs. Menendez that Lyle would never be an Olympic swimmer? Do you remember that incident?
Could you repeat that?
Yes, that incident that you referred to, or you
Yeah.
testified to earlier. You said that Lyle Menendez was in the pool and it was cold, and he came out and said it was too cold, and Mary Lou told him to go back in, that he would get used to the cold water.
Yes.
And you had indicated that the coach said, what are you trying to do, make him a champion?
Right.
Wasn't it the coach's statement that Lyle would never be an Olympic swimmer?
I don't recall that.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at a report?
Is this relate to the same conversation?
Yes, Your Honor, it does.
You can show the witness the report. All right, then why don't you identify what report it is?
He didn't even answer if it was refreshing. say?
Page 3 of the November 16th, 1991 statement. Interview with Faith and Peter Goldsmith. May I approach a witness, Your Honor? Could you take a look at the second paragraph on this page 3 of the November 16th, 1991 interview?
To whom was I speaking to?
It's a defense interview. I'm not sure who you spoke to. Do you remember interviewing with the defense on November 16th, 1991?
Yes. All right. Where am I supposed to be looking?
Second paragraph.
Question that you want me to answer?
Does that refresh your recollection of that incident?
Yes, I believe it's the same impression is given that the swimming teacher was saying he's not going to be a champ. Whether she used the word champion or Olympic swimmer, it was the idea that Mary Lou said, yes, he will be. That's what I'm working towards. And whether the words were Olympic swimmer or champion, I guess I can't be 100% certain, but that was the idea.
Okay. So when the instructor had told Mary Lou that her son Lyle would not be a champion or would not be an Olympic swimmer, Kitty or Mary Lou indicated that that was the wrong kind of attitude to have, that her sons could achieve. That'd be fair to say?
That would be fair to say, yes.
And she was a bit annoyed at the attitude of the swimming coach that she said in front of her son that he wouldn't be a champion.
Correct.
In that case, I agree. I don't think the swim coach should have said those things, and Kitty was actually, for once, potentially, well, maybe she wasn't sticking up for Lyle, though, or Eric, sorry. Maybe she was actually doing it because it's a Menendez, and you're trying to portray the best light for the Menendez family, and never say never. I don't know.
And relative to that, you had indicated that even for yourself, that Mary Lou Menendez would make you feel like you could do anything. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
She had a way of encouraging people?
Correct.
But did she encourage her own sons? Where's that question?
Now, with regard to the driving, you indicated that you went from New York to Washington, D.C., and Mrs. Menendez drove quite fast.
Correct.
Did she teach you how to drive?
No.
Did you have fun driving with her?
No.
Did I have fun?
Yes.
I don't know if I understand the question.
Okay, did you indicate that you like to drive with her and like to follow her places? Did you ever say that?
Did I like to follow her places?
Yes.
I'm not sure. I don't remember saying I like to follow her.
But did you like to drive with her? Go places with her?
I like to go places with her, yes.
Was there a situation where Jose Menendez wanted Mary Lou to be baptized?
Not that I know of.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at the same report, page 5?
Yeah, I'm going to object that. That's not still relevant anyway.
Yes, Your Honor.
Resume. Mr. Kuriyama?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Goldsmith, did you ever see Jose or Mary Lou Menendez abuse their children at the time that you saw them?
No.
Sustain.
Did you see any activity by either Jose or Mary Lou Menendez that you considered abusive of their kids?
It's still vague, Your Honor. I'm psychological abuse, physical abuse.
Sustain.
Did you see anything with respect to any physical abuse of the defendants in this case by either Jose or Mary Lou Menendez?
No.
Was it your impression, or was it your view that the defendants should have been disciplined more than they were disciplined by Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
By discipline, do you mean, what exactly do you mean by discipline?
For example, I believe you related an incident where they were running around a restaurant
Yes.
and making a lot of noise,
Yes.
and you thought that they should be disciplined, told to be quiet and stop running,
Yes.
and the Menendezes said, well, they're boys, it's okay. They're just being boys.
Yes.
Now, if in their being rambunctious, the defendants sustained some kind of scrape to their elbow or knee, would Mary Menendez, Mary Lou, would she clean up the wound and bandage it?
Yes.
You saw that?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that Mary Lou Menendez was a responsible mother, if not demonstrative,
She was not demonstrative.
not openly affectionate?
No, she was not.
But would you say that she was a responsible mother?
Calls for conclusion now.
You understand the question?
Yes.
All right. I'll overrule the objection.
You can answer that, Mrs. Goldsmith.
She was responsible in that they were well clothed, they were well fed, they certainly got to all of their activities, they had many activities. She was very involved in getting them to all of their activities, very aware of what they were doing in school. She was also negligent in far as watching them. That would be my view of her.
She would let the boys run around.
Yes.
Now, did your contact with the family, the real close contact that you had on almost a daily basis, you indicated that it ended when they moved to New Jersey?
Yes.
That was back in 1977?
I believe it was 77 or 78.
Okay. And
78, I believe.
between 1978 and 1986, you would still have some minimal contact with the family?
Correct.
Christmas time, that sort of
Correct.
thing? Now, after 1986, you had very little contact with the defendants and the family?
Correct.
So you didn't know what was happening with the defendants from about 1986 on?
Correct.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Redirect?
Mrs. Goldsmith, you were asked by Mr. Kuriyama about the fact that Mary Lou had to teach and that you were not being critical of that because she had to work. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, when you two were teaching together, about what time would the work day end?
3 o'clock.
So she would have been free to go home to her infant son at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. Is that correct?
Correct.
And this was during the period of time in which she talked about placing her son at her mother-in-law's house full-time during the week. Is that correct?
Yes.
And just visiting him on the way to skiing and on the way back.
Right.
So she would have had from 3 in the afternoon until whatever time everybody went to bed at night to spend with her son.
Right.
You talked about, I think Mr. Kuriyama asked you if Jose Menendez had a sense of humor.
Yes.
Was that at other people's expense sometimes? Was he the kind of person that sort of made fun of people?
Yes. Yes, it was.
And with regard to how good a friend Mary Lou and you were, was she the type of person to share secrets with you?
Overruled.
Mary Lou was a very private person. She rarely would confide personal things. Sometimes, if she had had a few drinks, she might at that point be more open and reveal some more things.
But generally speaking?
But generally speaking, no.
With regard to the picture that we have of the porch and the railing, was the floor of that porch ground level or was that elevated off of the ground?
It was elevated off of the ground.
And would it be fair to say that it was elevated at least your height off the ground and possibly more?
Do you mean the drop down?
From the floor of the porch, was it your height off the ground or higher off the ground, or was it just a few inches
On which
off the
side
ground?
of the porch?
The floor part that sticks out, that's out in the backyard. Let me point if I can.
I want to make sure I'm understanding it.
Should show you the picture.
Okay, the top railing and the floor.
Right.
Did you have an idea what the distance between the top railing and the floor would be? This height or more or less?
Maybe that height.
Okay. Now the distance, was this floor of the patio ground level or was it up off the ground? If you were
It was up
standing-
off the ground.
Okay. Now my question is, how far off the ground was it? If I was standing here, would it be at my height?
Oh, no, it would be higher than that.
Okay. How much higher?
As I remember it, it would be quite a bit high. You couldn't reach up and grab it. You could not,
So it would
to
be-
the best of my
So it
recollection,
would be at least 8 feet off the ground?
at least.
Okay. And then the railing would be another 3 to 4 feet above that. Is that correct? Off of the floor?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, okay, I got the picture. It took me a while, yes, okay.
So if a child is walking on this railing, they are now 12 feet off the ground? maybe?
Possibly, yes, yes.
Did you think that if someone fell off of that, they would kill themselves?
Rephrase the question.
Did you think it would be dangerous to fall?
I viewed it as dangerous, yes.
Dangerous in terms of someone might get a bruise, or did you think you could get more seriously injured than that?
More seriously injured than a bruise.
Like a broken leg or something?
Yes.
Would you let your girls walk up there?
No, I would not.
Overruled. The answer will stand.
Would you not let them work out there because they were just girls?
I resent that remark.
Good. All right.
I would not let them walk there because I thought it was dangerous for anyone to walk there,
So you think even boy children should be protected?
even boy children.
Overruled. The answer will stand.
Did you see that Lyle and Eric seemed to have a lot of injuries? A lot of,
Yeah, they were bruised up and cut up. Yes.
okay. I think Mr. Kuriyama asked you if Jose and Mary Lou wanted just what was best for their boys, and you said yes. What did you mean by best? What did Mary Lou and Jose mean by what was best for their boys?
They thought was best.
They wanted Lyle and Eric to be number one in sports. They wanted them, Jose would often say, he wanted the best for them. He wanted them to be in a good school where they could make good contacts so that they would have the right contacts in business to be successful.
And did you ever?
But you didn't let them have any friends. So how are they going to make contacts in school to be successful if they don't have any socialization skills? Because you've eliminated all of their friends in their life so that they could play tennis all day and all night.
ever suggest the possibility that maybe their kids wouldn't be the best, wouldn't be number one?
Sustained.
Did either Jose or Mary Lou talk about what would happen if their children weren't the best?
Yes, Jose and I once, or more than once, Jose and I had conversations when Lyle and Eric were very young, and he would at that point be telling me how they were going to be number one, and they would be the best at this whole scheduling that he had. And I would ask him, what would you do if they were not? What would you do if one of them had a learning disability? And he just said that would never happen, that his child could not have a learning problem, that they would be number one. And I said, but people do have children, just hypothetically speaking, what would you do? Would you be able to accept it? And he said he would never have a child like that. That it was not a possibility.
That tells you a lot.
I think Mr. Kuriyama asked you whether Jose had said that the most important thing in his life was his voice. Do you
Yes,
remember that?
yes.
Did he say that in front of Mary Lou?
I'm sure he did, yes.
Mr. Kuriyama asked you if Mary Lou made you feel like you could do anything, you could accomplish anything. Did she try to create the same atmosphere for her children?
Yes.
And did she ever talk to you about what her feelings were if they couldn't do everything she thought they could do?
She just always said that they could.
Did you think that her expectations might be unrealistic?
Sustained.
Did you ever suggest to her that maybe they couldn't be everything she believed they could be?
Overruled.
Could you just repeat the question, please?
Did you ever suggest to her that maybe her children wouldn't be able to be everything she thought they could be?
Yes.
And what was her reaction?
Her reaction was that if she set these goals for them, that they would reach them, and that they could achieve it. I often said that maybe that it wasn't always necessary to be number one in everything, and she said it was. That was something that we would discuss at times.
It was important to be number one?
Yes, it was necessary. It had to be.
Was it everything to be number one? Was that the only thing that was
It certainly
important?
seemed to be, yes.
You were asked if the boy sustained an injury, if she would clean the wound for them. Would she console them or comfort them if they were injured, or would she just clean the wound?
She would just clean the wound.
Was this different from how you saw other people deal with injured children?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Was there anything about it that struck you as unusual to just clean the wound?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
You were asked if she was let me go back. With regard to the restaurant incident and the children running around, did you observe Lyle and Eric to not be receiving control and direction from their parents with regard to their behavior?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Do you think that in terms of whether they were responsible parents, do you think that's responsible parenting to not correct your children in those areas?
I believe that that's the parent's job. That's the parent's responsibility to do that, yes.
Do you think
To discipline and stop that kind of behavior.
Do you think you're doing your children a favor if you don't correct them in those areas?
Sustained.
The question was whether they were responsible
Yeah,
parents.
well, that's the question you had asked, but now you're on to something else.
Okay. Do you think that it is responsible parenting to not correct your children in areas like that?
Speculation about their opinion is irrelevant.
Well, this is what you brought out, Mr. Kuriyama. Objection overruled.
Do you remember the question now?
I think I do.
Okay.
I definitely believe that is certainly, if a child is going to learn discipline and control and how to behave in a public place, it is the parent that teaches the child that. The child doesn't just come naturally. It's something that has to be taught.
And my last question is with regard to whether they were responsible. You said that you felt that they were negligent in the way they watched their children. Did you feel that they endangered their children by failing to be protective of them and monitor their activities?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
I felt that they left them in dangerous situations, and yes, I did.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else?
No further questions.
Okay.
Stephen Mosner, MOS-NER.
Okay, well, that was that for Faith. Let's, whoops, not recross. Up next, we've got, this is Stephen Mosner. He was a soccer coach. I don't know who took soccer. We'll find out.
N-E-R, ma'am. Stephen with a P-H, S-T-E-P-H-E-N.
All right.
Mr. Mosner, could you tell us where you reside, please?
I live in Lawrenceville, New Jersey,
And how long have you resided in New Jersey?
since 1968.
And in the late 70s, were you a coach of a soccer team?
I was a coach from 72 to 87.
And what was the team you coached?
I coached several teams, but they were all for the Tom Hamnitz organization.
All right. And Your Honor, I've had marked as the next exhibits in order. 3 photographs. Exhibit number 192 is a photograph which is labeled State Cup Champs 1977. 193 is also a photograph showing a photograph of Menendez. And 194 is another photograph of Lyle Menendez and his father.
Yes, sir. I coached all these boys.
Okay. And it says that they were champs of some kind in 1977.
Yes, sir. That was a year before I coached.
And is that you in the photograph, or is that another?
No, it's not. That's a gentleman by the name of Stephen Grover.
And is one of the people in the photograph Lyle Menendez?
Yes, sir. Lower left-hand, far left-hand corner.
I'm pointing to it right there.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
That's correct.
And did you coach this same team the year following the year that's depicted in there?
Not exactly the same team. 85, 90% of them are members of my team.
Okay, and showing you 193. Is that a photograph which depicts Lyle Menendez at about the age when you met him as a coach?
He looks a bit younger there.
Okay. And is that the jersey he's wearing, the name of the team that you coached?
That was from the same organization, yes.
And showing you 194. Is that a photo of Lyle Menendez
Yep.
around the time that you coached him?
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize the jersey he's wearing there?
I don't really.
Okay. That would have been the same age.
Yes, sir. That would have been a house team photo there. I coached them both on a house team and an all-star team. The blue uniform was the all-star. The yellow is a house team.
Okay. And you see in the lower photograph there's someone in the photograph with Lyle Menendez. Is that someone you recognize?
The gentleman to his left?
Yes.
Yes, sir. That was his father.
And how much, if any, contact did you have with the father as you were coaching Lyle Menendez?
I saw him frequently. I had little direct contact with him.
Look at that body language. Lyle does not want to be talked to by his father. And his dad's got his arm around his back and he's looking down at him like that. It looks like they're in a car. And Lyle is like hunched over, like, I don't want to be here. That's my impression of his body language.
Years, if you remember, did you coach Lyle Menendez?
I coach 11 and 12-year-old boys, so wherever that falls in.
So if he was born in 68, it would have been?
1980.
All right. And what was Lyle Menendez's behavior like on the field, on the soccer field?
He gave 125% at all times.
Would you describe what you mean by that?
Yeah, I used to have the boys, if they wanted a break, raise their hand and come out to take a rest. Lyle very infrequently raised his hands. At times he was tired and coughing out there, and I would ask him if he would want a break, and he would prefer to stay in the game.
In addition to playing soccer with you, did he appear to have a fairly busy schedule during the time that you knew him?
Extremely. He was often late for practices, often couldn't make tournaments and games. It was always a chore trying to arrange the team schedule so that he could be there.
Do you know what he was doing in the times when he would be late?
Oftentimes there were other lessons involved that took preference. Tennis, I believe, was the main one, but thinking back, swimming may have come in there, tutoring, trips. He just... As good as he played on the field, he wasn't always a member of the team because of his other priorities.
You said he gave 125% on the field.
So this kid likes soccer. He gives 125%. Well, we assume he likes soccer because he's giving his all, but that could just be his father drilling into his head that you have to give your all. But he still seems to be enjoying soccer, liking it, but he doesn't get to play it often or even go to practice often because his dad's got him going to all these other sports like tennis and swimming, which who knows if that's even what he wants to do. He's just being dragged to do them.
What was he like off the field, around the other boys that you were coaching?
He was usually in and out very quickly. The other boys liked him, but he didn't reciprocate towards them. He stuck to himself very often.
Did he mix with the other boys?
And that's because he didn't have socialization skills or techniques from an early age because the parents never socialized him properly. So he doesn't know how to fit in with other kids.
Boys socially that were on the team?
Not really.
Was he pretty much a loner?
The word probably described him well then.
Now, you said you had some contact with his father, is that right?
Well, his father would come to most of the games, and his father did show up at some practices.
And what was the father's behavior like in the presence of Lyle Menendez on the field?
Domineering. He spoke with an accent, and the one thing I remember, he would always yell, "Lyle, get the ball, get the ball."
Would that be in an encouraging voice or some other kind of voice?
Not really. At times it wasn't even conducive to the team because I would like the players to play in position and not to leave their position to go after the ball. And he didn't always understand this. That, I wanted the player in a certain spot on the field, not worried about where the ball was. But he had this repetitive term, "Lyle, get the ball, get the ball," and he would go up and down the sidelines.
And would he yell other things to Lyle besides get the ball?
I'm sure he did, but that's the one that stands out in my mind.
Did Mr. Menendez have any advice for you as the coach on how you should do your job?
I really didn't deal with him too much. I think he understood that that I probably wasn't going to listen to him. But he did say one time, he came up to me and said something in reference to either Lyle's grandfather or his grandfather was a professional soccer player in Cuba, and that he knew a lot about the game because of that, and that he just felt like, I got the feeling that he thought he knew more about soccer than I did, which he very well may have known, but I didn't deal with him.
Was he a nice guy to you, Mr. Menendez?
He was polite.
So, of course, Jose Menendez comes in thinking he knows more about soccer than the soccer coach and tries to do the soccer coach's job.
To me. I never had any cross words with him.
And did you see him interact with his son, for instance, during half times or timeouts in the game?
Yes, I did, sir.
What would you observe in that regard?
Mr. Menendez was very competitive, and he expected his son to give everything he had and some.
Did you see him physically do anything in relation to Lyle Menendez during the half times?
I did. He would right away when the whistle blew for the halftime, he would head right for Lyle. The team would come towards me. He would head for Lyle often with a towel. If it's cold out, we played in the winter, possibly some sweats, put them on him, dry him off. He actually, this is a little crude to say, but he actually treated Lyle almost like he was a thoroughbred racehorse, the way he would towel him down at halftime and after the game. But after the game, it was more of a quick thing to let's get you out of here as quick as possible. Often the players and the families would stay around, mill around for half an hour after the game, 45 minutes. But the Menendez family was out of there as quickly as possible.
And when you say he treated him like a racehorse, what do you mean by that?
I just mean it was more of a property than a son.
Objection sustained. The answer is correct.
Would there be times when the team would travel out of town?
Yes, sir.
And would Lyle Menendez always travel with the team, or would he get there by some other means of transportation?
At the time, I had a Volkswagen van that I used to pile the kids in, and Lyle, to my record, he may have gone with us once in the van. Usually his father would drive him.
His father would transport him to the game?
Yes, sir.
Did it seem like his father was treating him in a special way from the other players on the team?
I took it different. I took it that maybe his father didn't trust my driving. I can't answer why his father, but most of the other parents would go to the game.
Sustained.
And these times when you would see Mr. Menendez toweling Lyle Menendez down like a racehorse, did that happen on more than one occasion?
That happened quite often.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Examination on behalf of Eric Menendez.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Mr. Mosner, you coached Lyle Menendez when he was 11 and 12 years old. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And were the other boys on the various teams in which Lyle participated also 11 and 12 years old?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you said that Mr. Menendez often came to practices with his son. Is that correct?
I'm not going to say often. I'll say he came between 6 and 12 times.
Okay. During the times Mr. Menendez came to practices, would you ever see his other son, Eric?
Yes, ma'am. I'd say about a half a dozen times.
Okay. And would Eric accompany his father and his brother on the soccer practices?
He would come to practice, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And approximately how old was Eric on these occasions when he came to the soccer practices with his father and his brother?
Eric was a couple years younger, but much less developed than the other boys at that time.
Okay. So Eric, you said you thought was a couple years younger than his brother?
I'd say at least 2, ma'am.
Okay. Could he have been 3 years younger than his brother?
I'm sure that's possible.
Okay. So that when you saw Eric, he was 8 or 9.
It's a good estimate.
Okay. Now, are there, in your experience as a coach, developmental differences between 8 and 9-year-olds and 11 and 12-year-olds?
Severe.
Okay. Are 8 and 9-year-olds smaller?
Much less.
And are they also not as muscular as the older boys?
Yes, often much slower also.
What about their skill level, besides speed?
Nowhere near it.
Did Mr. Menendez ever make any concerning his son Eric when he would come and attend the practices?
Yes, he asked me on several occasions, anywhere from 3 to 6, Eric, if I minded if Eric practiced with the older boys.
Okay. And this was Mr. Menendez who made the request, not Eric, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I really never spoke to Eric.
Did Eric, in fact, participate in some practices with the older boys?
Yes, ma'am.
And did Eric try hard?
Tried as hard as anyone.
In your opinion, Mr. Mosner, was Eric evenly matched with the boys in Lyle's age group?
Seriously overmatched, ma'am.
What were your impressions, Mr. Mosner, of Eric on the field when he practiced with the older boys?
He tried hard, he played hard, but he physically couldn't stick up with them.
How long were these practices that Eric participated in?
Approximately an hour to 2 hours.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Mosner, you said that the Menendez brothers were busy. They had a busy schedule. Isn't that correct?
Rephrase the question, please.
Didn't you indicate that the brothers, or at least Lyle Menendez, was on a busy schedule?
Yes, sir, I did.
That he was often late for practice?
Yes, sir.
It was your understanding that he had other lessons to attend, for example, tennis and swimming lessons?
Other priorities.
And there was special tutoring, I think you testified to. Is that correct?
There was some type of tutoring going on. Whether it's special or not, I don't know.
Would that be academic tutoring or athletic?
I have no idea, sir.
But it was your understanding that they were on a busy schedule.
Yes, sir.
So they wouldn't hang around after the games. They would be off.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you said that you had some dealings with Mr. Menendez and you found him to be polite to you. Isn't that correct?
He was polite.
In fact, you considered him to be a nice guy who wanted the best for his boys. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
It appeared that way on the surface.
He probably didn't spend a whole lot of time with Jose.
Okay. And you stated that he was concerned that his sons do well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. He was one of the few fathers that would come to practices. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you said that Jose Menendez at these half times would take a towel and dry off his son, would he also make sure that his son was warm and put him in sweatpants, sweat clothes?
Yes, sir. He would make sure he put on sweatpants both at halftime and after the game.
Did he appear to be proud of his son?
Not really.
Oh, never ask a question you don't know the answer to, Mr. Kuriyama.
It seemed like they could
There's
never do
this-
enough for him.
There's no question pending. Move to strike, Your Honor.
Right, the objection overruled. The answer will stand.
He wanted his sons to do better. Would that be fair to say?
Nothing was good enough for him.
Did he tell you that?
No, sir, he didn't.
You gathered that from watching him towel his son down and put sweatpants on him?
Not just from that, just the general gist of him running up and down the sidelines. And I'm not going to use the word berate, but the kid was given everything he had all the time, and he always wanted more.
And when he would run up and down the sidelines and he would say, Lyle, get the ball, would that be common for parents to cheer on their sons that you coached?
It wasn't in cheering mode.
Lyle, get the ball is not...
It was
cheering mode?
it was much more frantic. It wasn't an encouraging tone.
Did you ever see any other parent get excited about his son playing on a soccer team that you coached?
Objection overruled.
Overruled.
As soon as the fact Menendez was getting excited about this.
Rephrase the question, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Did you ever see any other parent run up and down the sidelines when the game was in progress?
Not run up. They usually had one position throughout the game.
So they would stay still?
They would stay basically still, yes, sir.
And Mr. Menendez was a little bit more active than any of the other parents, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, he made it usually a point to wear a sweatsuit to the games.
He would wear a sweatsuit?
Yes,
to the
sir.
games?
I think he's like this freaking
Now, was he?
Olympics trainer.
Did you indicate that he was about the only father that you saw come to the practices?
To come and to watch a practice and stay there for the whole time, yes, sir. Most parents would drop off their kids, ask me what time I thought I'd be done. They would come back. Sometimes they'd come back 10 minutes early, watch practice, talk amongst themselves.
But he'd spend the entire practice there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nothing further, thank you.
Robert W. Klaus Jr., CLO.
Ooh, he's got some hair. All right, so we're on to the next witness. I have a question for you guys. I just thought about this. With all the pushing and everything that the Menendez parents did, if they hadn't had their lives taken from them when they did, where do you think, if, Lyle and Eric were able to grow up and make something of themselves, what do you think they would have done? I think it would have probably been sport related. I think, he would have kept them training in tennis and whatnot. And Lyle was actually the better tennis player, but they kept Eric on it longer. I don't know why, or they pushed him harder. I don't know. So it's just an interesting question for you guys that I'm posing for you. Put in the comments or the chat box what you think the boys would be doing now if they hadn't taken the lives of their parents. Would they be in sports? Would they have done something else? Would they have been, just useless for society? And would they go on to maybe continue the pattern of ABUSE? I don't know. It's something to think about. It's definitely something to think about but we will never know at this point. It's all speculation. All right, we're going to move on to Douglas. Whoops, who do I have here? Moser. Robert Klaus is next. Robert Klaus is Lyle's tennis coach, one of Lyle's tennis coaches.
Hello, USC.
Mr. Klaus, do you know Lyle Menendez, who's seated here in front of me?
Yes, I do.
And when did you first meet him?
The summer of 1986.
And were you his coach for a period of time?
Yes, I was.
Until when?
Spring of 87, I think it was.
Can you sit closer to the microphone or speak up?
It's a little bit alien to me.
Okay. Who hired you?
Mr. Menendez, Jose Menendez hired me.
Are you a little nervous?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Can you tell?
Yes. Did you engage in negotiations for this work, or was it just a real straightforward type of situation where he hired you?
Well, I had to negotiate with him.
Did that seem to be part of the process?
Yes, it was very much so.
Okay. And how did you do in the negotiations?
I'll have to rephrase the question.
Okay. After you had reached an agreement, did you find out that Mr. Menendez had a different interpretation of the agreement?
Overall.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?
Yes. After you and Mr. Menendez had reached an agreement on your salary, your contract,
Yes.
did you find out that he had a different interpretation of what that contract was?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the difference?
Overall.
The difference was it changed from weekly to a monthly,
And
or
did-
to a month.
Okay, so you thought you were being paid by the week. Is that yes?
Yes.
And he thought you were being paid by the month. Is that right?
We negotiated to that, yes.
And did you end up losing money?
Yes.
And did it seem that the money was the issue with him, or was there something
No,
else?
it did not.
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
Could you tell from his behavior whether he cared about the money?
No.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Did he appear to be a person to whom winning was important?
Yes, very much so.
And did he have to win at everything?
Sustained.
Did it seem to be important to him to win even at contract negotiations?
Sustained.
It was part of his contract negotiation, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Did he express to you pleasure at having gotten the better of you in the contract?
Overall.
Did he?
Okay, can you please, this is going pretty fast for me.
Okay.
Well, so far you haven't had answered too many questions, so we're doing okay.
I mean, I'm looking at this and it's like, we're playing ping pong or tennis.
Did Mr. Menendez express pleasure at having bested you at the negotiations?
Absolutely.
During the time that you were coaching Lyle, you said that this was summer of '86 to spring of '87, so he would have been 19 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was Mr. Menendez in control of what was going on with regard to the coaching and Lyle's life?
Objection. Pound, pulse circulation, and conclusion.
Sustained.
Did Mr. Menendez seem to be actively involved in what was happening with his son's life?
Objection calls for speculation and lack of foundation.
What you saw of it.
Okay, can we have this one more time so I don't, I'm getting with this.
Okay.
Objections
Okay.
are sort of breaking up the rhythm of this.
I think that's the intention.
It's all right.
Your Honor,
Was
Yes, counsel's remark is stricken, and counsel's admonished not to say such things.
I apologize, Your Honor. Did it appear that Mr. Menendez was making the decisions in Lyle's life?
Yes, very much so.
Where was Lyle living at the time you first met him? What city, state?
He was living in New Jersey.
Okay. And were his parents living in New Jersey?
No, not that time. Not
Do you
that
know
time.
where they were living?
They were supposed to be in Los Angeles, I think, from what I perceive.
And was Lyle living in a very large, beautiful
Yes.
home?
Yes.
Is this the Mountain Avenue home, the Princeton
Yes.
mansion?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it furnished?
No, it wasn't.
Did it have electricity?
Not to my knowledge when I was there.
And during the time that he was living in New Jersey and his parents were living in California, did it still appear that the parents were the ones making the decisions about his life?
Objection calls for conclusion and speculation.
Sustained.
Did you, during this period of time, did you see the parents making the decisions about Lyle's life?
Well, at that time, all the decisions were made by Jose, or every major decision.
While you were coaching Lyle, did you get to know him?
Very much.
Did he play hard?
Every time.
Did he play even when you didn't think he should?
Yes, he did.
Under what conditions did you think he shouldn't play, and yet he did anyway?
Yes, this was the U.S. Pro Indoor pre-qualifying.
And why did you think he shouldn't play?
Well, he sprained his ankle, I think the day before, wearing boots, and I just almost wanted to pull him out.
And he wouldn't let you?
Well, at that point, he said he wanted to play. So I went along with it.
Did he talk about his father to you?
About a little bit, yes.
Did he seem to be proud of his father or ashamed of his father? How did he speak of his father?
He seemed very proud of a lot of the things he has accomplished.
Okay. And did he talk about him as a weak man or a strong man?
No, never weak. Always very tough.
And would he talk about what Jose was like in business?
Yes, he. Okay, sorry.
Calls for hearsay.
I'm not asking what he said. It's just
Wait,
what.
the objection is overruled. The answer, yes, will stand.
Okay, so.
Wait, you've answered the question.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So he talked about what his father was like in business. Is
Yes,
that correct?
he has mentioned, yes.
Okay. And did he seem to have an impression of who his father was in business?
Yes.
Objection calls for speculation and conclusion.
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
Did what he told you about his father have any effect on you with how you dealt with Jose Menendez?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you have an encounter with Jose Menendez, which you later related to Lyle?
Yes.
Okay. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Was this encounter in February of 1987?
Yes.
And did it take place at the Calabasas house?
Yes.
Now, this is not the big house, but a smaller house the family lived in, is that right?
Yes.
And were you over there for dinner?
Yes.
Was Lyle there?
Yes.
Was Mrs. Menendez there?
Yes.
Was Eric there?
Yes. And the ferret.
And the ferret. After dinner was over, did Mr. Menendez ask you to step away from the table?
Yes.
And did you do so?
Yes.
And did he direct you to some particular location?
Yes, we did walk to another room.
Did everybody else join you?
No.
Who else joined you?
Kitty followed.
And did Mr. Menendez then have a conversation with you which you later related to Lyle?
Later in April.
Okay. What was that conversation?
Did you wish to be heard?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may approach. All right.
Thank you. Mr. Klaus, I believe we're at the point where you said that you were directed into a room, went into a room, Mr. Menendez and Mrs. Menendez were there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you sit down?
No, we stood up.
And who did the talking?
Jose did the talking.
Now, can you remember absolutely word for word what was said, or you just remember the general message that was given?
I got the gist.
Okay. And are there particular words that stand out in your mind, though, that were
Yes.
used? Okay. Now, with our apologies to the jury, I would like you to repeat now what it was Mr. Menendez said to you.
I can say this.
I'm in the same boat as the jury. I don't know what it is you're going to say.
He's concerned about
Sir.
some of the language, Your Honor, so I'd like him to repeat what was said.
Well, if it makes you uncomfortable, then don't.
It doesn't make me feel uncomfortable.
All right, then.
I just don't know these people.
Okay, well, then, just give us the gist without the specific words. Then.
Your Honor,
Feel
I'd like
uncomfortable.
him to use
All
the
right,
specific
first,
words.
Give us the gist.
Okay. He says, don't fuck with my son's future. Is that fucking perfectly clear?
And did he go into any detail about what that meant in terms of his future, what he was or wasn't to do?
Yes.
And what was that?
Tennis was just, I was babysitting now. As a babysitter for his tennis, he's going to go to Princeton. School starts and that's it.
And did he want you to not say particular things or not guide him in particular directions?
Well, at that point, I knew that it was changing. The whole idea was changing from tennis to he was going to school and I was going to be eventually terminated.
Now, the way that this discussion took place, was this a lighthearted discussion? Was he joking around?
No, his eyes were on me and I was on his eyes and it was intimidating.
And after he said this, did you do anything? Did you look around or anything?
I did look at Kitty.
Why?
I was looking for some kind of a support or some kind of a help.
Okay.
And there was nothing. And that's when I started to say something and he put his hand up. And that was it. I stopped.
How old were you at the time?
I was about 35.
Now, when he put his hand up, why didn't you just speak your piece?
I knew. That was the end of the conversation.
But why wouldn't you just go ahead and explain what your views were?
I just felt that was it. No more to be said. Dismissed.
Okay. Did you later repeat this conversation to Lyle?
In April.
And why was it that you saw him in April? What was happening?
He flew to Florida to play a segment. It's a USTA segment, which is a professional tournament.
Has something to do with tennis, I take it?
So just again, he said, "Don't f with my son, or my son's future." So he doesn't like this tennis coach, apparently.
Yes.
USTA is U.S. Tennis Association?
Yes.
Okay. And when you saw him, is that when you told him about the conversation?
Yes.
And how did he react? Did he say anything right then?
He didn't say anything right then. He just looked very sad, like all of a sudden. And I think he knew something happened.
Objection sustained. That party answer is stricken.
So he looked very sad?
Yes.
Did he then go into play?
The next morning.
And what happened?
Something that I've never seen before or after.
How long have you been coaching?
20 years.
And what happened?
He played a person who we met in Australia, and he played him, and he was playing very tough. It was like 3-3 in the first set. He lost the first set.
When you say he, who lost?
I'm sorry, Lyle then lost the first set, and something very strange happened. He walked to the net and had a small conversation with his opponent and walked off the court. And his opponent then reported the scores as 6-3, 6-3. He only played one set.
Have you ever?
Never. Never.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Mr. Klaus, I believe you indicated that Lyle Menendez went to Australia.
Yes.
Was that on a tennis playing trip, do you know?
Yes.
Do you know how long before you met him that he'd gone on this trip to Australia? Or was it during the time that you knew him?
He went to Australia with me.
Oh, and when was that?
That was February of '87.
I believe you indicated then that you met, or you started to coach Lyle Menendez in the summer of 1986, correct?
Correct.
And how many hours a week did you coach him, or did it vary?
It was pretty consistent.
And could you tell me how often?
We were training between 2 and 4 hours a day. 5 sometimes, maybe a 6th day.
So 2 to 4 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, correct?
Correct.
And this was pursuant to a contract that you had, right?
Yes.
Okay. And who paid for it? Do you know who paid for your services?
Yes, Jose did.
Where did you play?
I belonged to an indoor club in Langhorne, and also on private courts. On private courts.
So I believe you indicated that in February of 1987 that you accompanied Lyle Menendez on a trip to Australia for the purpose of him playing tennis. Is that correct?
Correct.
And was that trip paid for by his father?
Yes.
Do you know how long you were in Australia?
Approximately 3 weeks, less than a month.
Okay, so 3 to 4 weeks?
Yes.
I believe you indicated that you had this conversation with Mr. Menendez that you related to us in Calabasas. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But were your coaching duties performed in the East Coast?
I also performed them out here.
Okay. How many times did you visit in California during this period of time between the summer of '86 and the spring of '87?
Well, we I just came out here 2 weeks before we left for Australia, and then when I came back, before I flew back to Florida.
Okay, so you were out here the 2 weeks before the Australia trip and then a few days after the trip?
No, it was like within 1 day, I think I left.
After the Australia trip?
Yes, when I arrived back in March, I flew back, I think, within 24 hours.
Now, that was then March of '87, correct?
Yes.
Did you continue to coach Lyle Menendez after that period of time?
Like I said, on the tournament when he came to Florida in April.
Right. Now, I believe that you've indicated that Mr. Menendez had this conversation with you and that it sounds like it upset you. Did it upset you?
More so later than at the point.
Okay. And then you repeated this conversation to Lyle Menendez right before he was going to play in the Florida tournament. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, when Mr. Menendez spoke to you, did he indicate to you that he wanted his son to attend Princeton University?
His son was going to attend.
And he was desirous of his son pursuing an academic career at Princeton. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Versus being a professional tennis player?
Versus yes.
Okay. And I believe you've indicated that sometime in April you went to Florida with Lyle, or you saw him?
I live in Florida.
Okay, and you saw him in Florida in April, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now, were you living in Florida when you were coaching Lyle Menendez in New Jersey?
Yes.
Okay, so were you exclusively dealing with Lyle Menendez at this time?
Not exclusively.
Did you have other students in New Jersey at that time?
Not in New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
Nearby?
Yes.
Okay. And when you told Lyle Menendez this information right before he started the tournament, did you think maybe it would upset his playing in the tournament?
Do I think it would upset him?
Yes.
There was concern for both of us.
Well, was there a reason you couldn't have waited until after the tournament?
No, ma'am.
Well,
No.
There's no way you could have waited till after to tell him?
I had a threat from his father. That was a threat.
Okay, and the threat was when? In February?
Yes.
And the tournament was in April?
Yes.
And between the threat in February and April, you hadn't said anything to Lyle Menendez about what his father
No.
said? And was this threat that you got from his father before you went to Australia?
I'm sorry, can you slow down, please?
Okay, all right. You said you got a threat from Mr. Menendez, is that correct?
In February.
Was that before or after the trip to Australia?
That was when the trip was finished in Australia. We came back to the house. That's when I got this threat.
So that would have been about March then, if you'd been gone 3 to 4 weeks?
I got the threat in February. I'm sorry, March, the first week of March we came back. I got it yes in March, and then I went home to Florida.
And did you have any contact with Lyle Menendez between coming home from Australia and receiving this threat and the tournament in...
I got a phone call telling me he was wanted to come to Florida to play a tournament.
And did you speak to Lyle during that phone call? I believe you said he told me he wanted to come play the tournament.
Yes.
So that you spoke with Lyle
Yes.
then? Okay.
Very
Now,
briefly.
When you told Lyle what had happened, what his father had said, I believe you indicated that he then went out the next day and basically forfeited the game. Is that what happened?
He played the tournament, and halfway through the tournament, he didn't default.
He forfeited.
He didn't forfeit.
He left.
The match went in as 6-3, 6-3, which is a full match.
But he didn't play the entire match. Is that correct?
No, he didn't.
And did you see him after the match was over?
Yes.
Okay, were you trying to make him lose the match?
Was I trying to make him lose?
Yes.
No, absolutely not.
When Mr. Menendez told you that you were just babysitting his son, did you think about quitting his employment?
At that time?
Yes.
I knew that I was being terminated at that time from coaching, from what I perceive as coaching.
But you did meet up with Lyle again in April of 1988.
Yes.
Or excuse me, 87.
Yes.
Okay. Were you employed at that time?
Okay. They were coming in for a tournament. I felt I was going to be babysitting. I had mixed emotions.
Did you get paid?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any redirect?
Why did you feel it was necessary to communicate this threat to Lyle?
I felt threatened from Jose's threat that with my son, and it's perfectly clear. And my emotions were then, I felt I was never going to coach him again. And now I'm getting him to come to Florida for a tournament. And I thought, I can't coach the way I'd like to, because I felt threatened. But he's now, I'm sorry. So I felt very threatened by this. And I knew I had to say something to Lyle, because I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no idea what would happen to me or him.
Were you afraid for your safety?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you afraid for his safety?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Were you afraid for his?
Douglas Herbert Doss. Last name is D-O-S-S.
Sorry. She said, were you afraid for his safety and for your safety? And he said yes to both. All right, so we're going to now go to Douglas Doss, D-O-S-S, Eric's tennis coach. So that was Lyle's tennis coach that we just heard from. And this is Eric's tennis coach. But I'm going to take a real quick break because it looks like the dogs need to go out, and it's about that time. 2 hours or so is our limit. So I need a stretch break. Anyways, so hold on one second. I'll be right back. In a back. All right. So let's continue on with Douglas Doss, Eric Menendez's tennis coach.
Herbert.
Mr. Doss, what is your occupation?
I'm the director of tennis at Mountain Gate Country Club.
You're whispering. I can hardly
Oh,
hear
sorry.
you.
I'm the director of tennis at Mountain Gate Country Club.
And Mountain Gate Country Club is here in Los Angeles
Yes, it
County? And being director of tennis, does that mean that you're basically a tennis expert, tennis pro, tennis coach?
Yeah.
And how long have you been involved in that sort of capacity with tennis?
About 20 years.
Now, Several years ago, did you make the acquaintance of Eric Menendez and his family?
Yes, I did.
At the time you made their acquaintance, where were you employed?
The Calabasas Park Tennis Club.
And what was your position at Calabasas Park Tennis Club?
I was the manager and director of tennis, head pro.
And do you remember approximately what year it was when you first made the acquaintance of Eric and his family?
Not exactly, 87 maybe. I don't really recall exactly the year.
When did you start at the Calabasas Park Tennis Club?
So I worked for Warner Center Club. We took over Calabasas in 84, I believe it was, for 4 years.
Okay.
We ran 2 clubs at the same time.
Warner Center was another tennis club in the San Fernando Valley?
Yes.
That one's off Canoga?
Right, in Woodland Hills.
Now, do you know if the Menendez family belonged to, strike that, at some point, did the Menendez family join the Calabasas Park Tennis Club?
Yes, they did.
Did that also give them privileges at the Warner Center Club?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, when you worked at Calabasas Park Tennis Club, was there a group of youngsters that you were coaching?
Yeah, there was quite a few kids there at the time.
And by kids, what age group were you mainly concerned with?
12 to 16, 12 to 17.
And were there a group of kids who were from Calabasas High School who also belonged or were members of the club?
Yes.
And when you met Eric Menendez, was he attending Calabasas High School?
Yeah, he was just moving into the area and just starting school.
If I were to tell you that the family moved into the area in the summer, fall of 1986, would that refresh your recollection about when you met them?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
And it was just when they had come to the area?
Right, right.
Now, this group of, let's focus on, were there a certain group of kids who were at Calabasas Park Tennis Club who were high schoolers?
Yes.
And is that the group that Eric eventually became a member of?
Right.
And how would you compare Eric, as far as his behavior and personality, to the other members of that high school age group? Did Eric stand out somehow in your notice?
When he first came to the club?
Well, after you got to know him.
He was fairly calm. I mean, compared to a lot of the other kids that were how do you say, much wilder than normal kids, you know. But he was pretty calm guy.
When you say these other kids were wilder than normal kids, were they good kids? I mean,
they're basically good kids.
Did you notice in the course, first of all, did you coach Eric?
Yes.
Did you teach him?
Yeah.
Over how long a period of time?
Well, privately a very short time, but he was in the junior program itself for a couple of years.
So you knew him and had contact with him over a period of a couple of years, say from 86 to 88?
Right.
And at some point did he start, well, at some point did he just leave Calabasas Park Tennis Club?
Yes.
And to the best of your recollection, that would have been 88?
Yeah.
Did he also receive private coaching from other coaches that you were aware of?
Yes.
Now, in the course of your acquaintance with Eric, did he ever demonstrate any aggressiveness towards authority figures?
Not aggressiveness, no, huh?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, never. No, not hostile at all.
What did he exhibit towards authority figures, such as you were an authority figure at that club?
Yeah. We got along fairly well. He had a great sense of humor. He worked really hard, extremely hard, and at times he'd just space out during lessons and such. But
we'll get to that. But he worked hard.
Yeah.
Was he obedient, respectful to the board?
Definitely, yeah, he was.
Well, Your Honor, I'd like to be heard.
Counsel, let's move on to something else.
Okay. Was there something you observed about Eric that seemed unusual or abnormal during the course of workouts?
Understand what she's asking? Yeah. Okay, overall.
Okay. Did you observe something that seemed very unusual to you?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and if you could, speaking slowly, describe for us what this was that you would observe.
Okay, as I said before, Eric was a very hard worker on the court, and he'd basically do everything he was asked to do. And but there were times when he would just disappear mentally. He'd just space out, and he'd be gone for a second, and then he'd start laughing about it. And I just assumed that was his sense of humor, because that's where we connected more than anything else, is that level of humor that he had. But he would just be gone. And for no real apparent reason. It wasn't like it was real stressful, or it was something I was asking him to do that he wasn't capable of doing. It would just be a time where I wouldn't expect it, and he'd be gone.
He just seemed to, his concentration would seem to evaporate?
It was over. And it wouldn't last very long, just a very short period of time. Then we'd take a break and talk about it or whatever, but it wasn't, wasn't expected.
Sometimes when you're working with kids, with teenagers, and you're pushing them, do they sort of stop working or break concentration in a deliberate way?
Some kids will, because they don't want to do it. But I mean, most kids at
go ahead.
Most kids at that level of workout will stay with you, and you can tell when they've had enough. You can tell when they're about ready to, to break or need a break. And
now, these things that you noticed with Eric, though, was it what you had seen with any other kid?
Sustained.
What was different about what you saw with Eric?
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm trying to
He's described how he observed this incident. That's sufficient.
Would Eric be able to tell you afterwards what had gone on mentally in his head that caused him to space out?
Overall. No.
I mean, was there a discussion about it where you'd want to know?
I would try to get to find out, but he wouldn't even know, actually. It was more of a... Sustained, that answer is correct.
Did he indicate to you that he didn't know?
That's what it was, yeah, he didn't know.
Now, did you ever observe Eric's father at the Calabasas Park Tennis Club?
Yes.
And specifically, did you observe an incident that involving Mr. Menendez, Eric, and his brother Lyle?
Yes.
And did you see Lyle from time to time?
Occasionally when he was in town, yeah.
And could you tell us, with respect to this one incident, what preceded the noticeable aspects of the incident? What was happening?
Eric and Lyle were working out on the front stadium court at Calabasas.
When you say they were working out, what were they doing?
They were hitting with each other, working on their game.
They were hitting balls at each other?
Yeah.
And what occurred?
Ms. Menendez was leaning over the railing. Mr. Menendez was leaning over the railing.
Had he been there, Mr. Menendez, had he been there all the time
No.
that you gotta let me finish.
I'm sorry.
That the two sons were working out?
No.
Did you see him show up?
Yeah, he showed up in his work clothes, business suit.
He was wearing a suit?
Yeah, without a coat.
Okay. And when he showed up, he went over to this court that his sons were playing on?
Right, at the end of the railing.
And what did you observe?
A couple things. One, that he started basically yelling at the kids to hit harder, to work harder. And they had been doing that before he arrived.
They were doing what before he arrived?
They were working hard before he arrived, which they always did when they hit with each other. But it changed when he showed up. And because of his demands on them, they were hitting the ball harder, and they always hit it hard anyway. But it changed because it was more it looked like they were mad when they were playing. And
he was demanding that they hit the balls harder and
hard
harder.
as they could.
And they started hitting harder and harder and harder?
Yeah.
Okay. And did he sound satisfied?
No.
What did you hear?
He didn't change his tone. He kept asking for more. So.
And was he addressing his demands more towards one of his sons than the other?
A little more towards Eric, just because Lyle was stronger. But it was towards both of them.
Okay. You had observed, even prior to this incident, the relative strengths and talents of Lyle as a tennis player and Eric as a tennis player. And how would you compare them, very briefly?
Sustained.
Was Lyle physically stronger and a stronger athlete than Eric?
Overall. Yes, he was.
In your opinion, as a tennis coach, was it reasonable for someone to expect Eric to be able to perform at the same level as Lyle at that time?
Overall. No.
No, it was not reasonable?
No, it was not reasonable.
I was rolling my eyes because I'm like, he keeps sustaining and all these objections, and we're not going to get the answer, but we got it.
Did Mr. Menendez, when he was making these demands, how did he appear mood-wise? Was he happy, sad, angry, what?
He definitely wasn't happy. I don't know if it was anger, but he was not pleased with what he was saying.
And did you see anything to criticize in what the sons were doing in response to his demands?
Sustained.
As a tennis coach, was there anything that they were doing that was wrong vis-a-vis his demands?
Not before he showed up. When he was there, yeah.
Well,
he was for what he wanted them to do. It wouldn't make sense. I mean, you don't do things. You don't hit the ball 1,000 miles an hour all the time, and that's what he wanted from his kids.
Of course, they were trying to do what he wanted.
Of course they were.
And he was not pleased.
No.
So could you figure out any reason why he was not happy with them obeying his instructions?
Sustained.
Now, did you hear Mr. Menendez say critical things besides the demands? Was he saying berating or critical things to either of his sons?
I don't recall the exact words, but that was the tone of it.
Now, were you also acquainted through the Calabasas Tennis Club with a young man named Craig Signorelli?
Yes, I was.
And were you aware that Craig and Eric knew each other?
Yes.
And
We saw Craig's testimony in the state's case.
do you recall at some point after Eric and Lyle were arrested, being at the pro shop at Warner Center Club and hearing a conversation of Craig Signorelli's?
He was actually in the workout facility at Warner.
It was at the workout
Yeah.
at the Warner Club?
Right.
And was Craig Signorelli in that workout facility?
Yes, he was.
And did you overhear him talking?
No, he was talking to me.
So he was talking to you directly?
Yeah.
And can you describe what his tone was when he was talking to you? What his demeanor was?
It was, gloating maybe. I don't know what he was telling me a story. And he was very proud about it, that he was involved in the story he was telling me.
And he was telling you of his involvement in what?
In the Menendez situation at the time.
And did he say anything to you about his expectations or any expectations he had because of his involvement?
That was the gist of the conversation about him, book deals and movie deals, that type of thing. That he knew the facts and that he was bragging about it.
What was he saying about book deals?
Well, there was a book in this for him. He was going to write a book about it.
And what was that going to do for him?
I don't know, fame and money. Who knows? I mean, but that's what he was talking about.
Did he?
Well, there goes Craig's credibility if he had any. Because I find this guy credible. I don't see any reason for him to lie.
He say that he was going to make a lot of money from what he knew?
Yeah.
And how did you respond to him?
I told him he should keep his mouth shut because the facts weren't out. And he said, well, they are. I know the facts. He proceeded to tell me the facts. I'm going, well, we don't know that. And this was in a room of people, that the people were working out. Anybody could hear this. And I told him he just should be quiet.
And did he seem to enjoy talking about this in front of all these other people?
Yeah. It wasn't like a quiet conversation.
It was a boastful conversation?
A bit, yeah.
Now, Mr. Doss, do you recall myself and my private investigator, Ms. Erdely, interviewing you in July of 1992?
Yes.
Up at the Mountain Gate Country Club.
Mm-hmm.
And do you recall at that time we gave you for you to review a police report purporting to contain a statement from you to Detective Zoller, I suppose it is.
Yes.
And did you review that police?
Detective Leslie Zoller is the lead detective in this case. We saw him on direct in the state's case twice, and it looks like the defense is going to recall him again. So the state brought him in, then they recalled him at the end of their case, and then the defense is going to call him again. So he's going to be on the stand one more time.
Report in July when I first showed it to you.
I did.
Yes.
Anyway, back to July of '92. Did you read it? I think it's like a 2-paragraph statement of yours in this police report.
Yes.
And did that 2 paragraphs in this report accurately reflect what you had told the Beverly Hills Police Department?
Not exactly, no.
And for example, had you told the Beverly Hills Police Department that Eric was a wild kid, very high-strung?
No.
What had you told them about Eric's temperament and personality?
Well, exactly the exact words I'm not sure, but it's been a while. But that wildness wasn't like the other kids that were at that club at the time. It was more like a young lion just kind of expressing himself and finding out what his boundaries were. But not, it wasn't negative. You know, it wasn't like he was obnoxious and pushy like a lot of the kids were, without any discipline.
Okay. So did Eric appear to have discipline?
Oh, yes, he did.
Did he appear to be hardworking and obedient?
Yes.
And even as to these other kids who were wilder, did they all turn out okay?
Yeah, they did, actually. Even the wildest ones.
Okay. Now, did you tell the Beverly Hills Police in your interview, I believe this interview was August 29th, 1989, that Eric's father was very interested in his tennis game and would always make sure that he concentrated on his game?
No.
What did you tell them about Jose Menendez and his attitude towards his son and his tennis?
What I told him was I thought that he was overbearing and basically living through his kids like a lot of parents do in sport, and it wasn't realistic. But not that he was attentive and all that.
Attentive.
So many people are saying that Jose lived through his kids. He made his kids do the things that he wishes he could have done. And so he practiced them endlessly for tennis and swimming and soccer and all sorts of things.
Sounds positive.
Yes.
Did you think Mr. Menendez's involvement in his son's sports was positive?
No, I did not.
Speculation.
Okay, I have nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you had indicated that you had actually coached Eric Menendez for a short period of time over this 2-year period?
Yes.
Was a coach by the name of Craig Heinberg the coach?
Yes, he was.
And how long was Craig Heinberg the coach?
I don't know that. I don't know how long he coached him, because I know that Delaney and Paul Hobach coached him as well. Okay. So I don't know how long Craig was involved with that.
Do you know Craig Heinberg?
Yes, I do.
And how do you know him?
Through tennis.
I'm sorry?
Through tennis. I mean, he was at the Calabasas Tennis Club when we took over the club.
Okay, and
he was teaching there.
So you were the manager and he was one of your coaches?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
And he was the one that was given the task of coaching Eric Menendez?
I don't know if he was given the task. I know that he was coaching a lot of kids at that time, along with some of the other pros that were there as well. I don't know how long that was with Eric.
Now, you remember talking to the detectives from the Beverly Hills Police Department on August 29th, 1989?
Yes.
And you told the detectives at that time about the coach, Craig Heinberg, isn't that correct?
I believe so. I believe I did.
And
I don't recall that.
At some point, did you tell the detectives about Coach Craig Heinberg?
Yes.
And you testified here that Eric Menendez, you had said that he was a wild kid in the report, but you said he wasn't wilder than some of the other...
It wasn't wild in a negative sense. I wasn't saying that he was out of control and that type of thing. It wasn't a negative statement towards it.
And you were asked about your association with Eric Menendez over these 2 years from, I believe, 1986 to 1988. And you said that Eric was not hostile, not aggressive. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And this is what you knew about him over that 2-year period?
Right, my experience with him.
Okay. You knew that Craig Heinberg, the coach, had problems with Eric Menendez.
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay. Well, I'd like to approach on this whole...
Isn't that correct, sir?
I had heard, yes. He had problems with him.
What had you heard?
Your Honor, I'm objecting. This calls for hearsay. They can call Mr. Heinberg if they want to.
Let's not argue the matter. Overruled.
What had you heard about the incidents between Eric Menendez?
I had heard that he had trouble with him disciplinary-wise.
That who had trouble
that
with
Craig had trouble with Eric.
Craig Heinberg?
Yes.
And what in particular did you hear about
Objection. Hearsay.
Were you given any information about the breaking into...
Objection, Your Honor. I asked to approach, and I cite the proper conduct.
All right, we'll hear your discussion at the sidebar, and the jury is admonished to disregard the remarks of counsel. Lawyers can say things, but when they say things, they're addressing me, and they're not addressing the jury. When the lawyers address the jury, they'll do that in closing argument when they have to comment on the evidence. Discussions at this point are directed towards the court. All right, let's see counsel at the sidebar.
We were talking about this coach, Craig Heinberg. When you spoke to the police on August 29th, 1989, had you been given information from Craig Heinberg about his relationship with the defendant in this case?
I don't know if it was directly from Craig, but
I would object to any further answers.
All right,
All hearsay.
did you understand the question?
yes, I did.
Okay, and it's either yes or no.
No.
Okay.
You had not received information directly from Mr. Heinberg?
No.
Had you gotten information regarding the relationship between Mr. Heinberg and the defendant in this case? however?
Objection on call for hearsay.
Overrule.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Can you redirect? All right, thank you. You may step down. Your excuse subject to being recalled.
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Spell your last name.
C-R-O-S-S.
And what is your full name?
Patricia Norman Cross.
Okay. You may proceed.
Thank you. Could you tell us what you do for a living, please?
I'm a school teacher.
And how long have you been a school teacher?
I've lost count, somewhere in the region of 30 years.
30 years.
Mhm.
And did you, for a certain period of your career, teach at a school called the Princeton Day School?
I still do, as a matter of fact.
And how long have you taught there?
15 years.
And when did you start teaching there?
In 1979.
And so you've taught there from 1979 to the present?
Exactly.
Do they all speak as you do at the Princeton Day School?
Actually, quite a few.
Okay. All right.
You're English, by the way, for the record.
Actually, I'm not. I'm American. But I obviously was born in England. I've been an American citizen since 1979.
What is the Princeton Day School? What kind of a school is it?
It's a highly competitive prep school which expects to send a very good percentage of its students to Ivy League colleges, and many parents send students to our school with that particular intent in mind.
And when you say it's highly competitive, is this a school that's also very expensive?
Yes, I don't think I could afford to send my children there. At the moment, the tuition is in the realm of $12,000 a year for day students.
And what do you teach exactly?
I teach history in the middle school, which means 5th through 8th grade.
And is there an upper school as well?
Yes, there is. That's 9th through 12th grade.
And do you know the defendant in this case, Lyle Menendez?
I taught him in 6th grade.
And was that in approximately 1979 to
Yes, it was in the year of 79 to 80.
Now, as part of your responsibility as a teacher, do you periodically throughout a school year make out written reports on your students?
Yes, a way of communicating with parents.
And these written reports go both to the student and to the parent?
No, it varies. They're written. Some people choose to write them more to the student. It's more usual to write them in the third person to the parent, referring to the student in the third person.
Right, and I've had marked as next in order your honor 2 pages of school records. That would be exhibit 195 with the court's permission.
Let me just double check my records here. All right, 195.
And may I press your witness?
Yes.
And showing you exhibit 195, do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
And could you tell the jury what that is?
These are a series of reports. The school year was divided into 3 terms, not 2 semesters, 3 terms. I don't quite know why, but that's how it was. And then halfway through each term, the student would receive what was called an interim report, or the parents would receive an interim report to let them know how the student was doing during the first, I suppose, 6 weeks of the first term. And then at the end of the term, there would be a term report, and this would be repeated then for the 3 terms during the year. And what I have in front of me here are the interim reports and the final term reports for each of the 3 terms.
And in total, there are 5 separate little reports on the 2 pages of paper that you have there, all written by you, is that
Absolutely.
correct?
Nobody can read it, but it's written by me.
Right. And the first report is written on October 14th, 1979,
That's
correct?
true.
And without going into the detail of that report, is it true that it's a negative report?
One could say that.
And in fact, you underlined certain
Yes, I did.
letters and words to emphasize that, in your view,
And I wrote them in block capital letters, yes.
and indicating that Lyle must be prepared for class. He must
hand in his assignments. You see, you can't read it either.
I can't, I'm sorry. And he must concentrate in class.
Yes.
Indicating he was having problems in those areas.
Yes.
And that report went to his parents,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And is it true that the next report is dated November 26, 1979?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you had some negative things to say in that report. Is that true?
Yes, with an encouraging final comment, like I'm hoping that things will improve and a little more effort for next term.
All right. And then the next one is January 20th, 1980, correct?
Yes.
And again, some criticism in that report. Is that true?
Yes, about inattentiveness in class, but I do say there has been an improvement.
And in the report dated November 26, 79, you actually give him a grade. Is that true?
Yes, that's because it was the end of the first term.
And you gave him a grade of 4B?
Yes, Princeton Day School has a very peculiar grading system, and I don't know if you want me to expound on that.
Well, just tell us whether that's a bad grade or a good
It's marginally bad. It's below average.
Now, the next report, which is on page 2, is dated March 1st, 1980, correct?
Yes.
And you gave him an improved grade at that point?
Yes.
And also the report itself is improved with some minor criticism, correct? And the last report dated June 5th, 1980, is also has a grade of 3B, which is an improved grade.
Yes, and that's for the 3B for the term and 3 for the year, which means average.
And that report appears to be favorable, correct?
Yes, you have to understand, at the end of the school year, you're trying to give the student a pat on the back and say, this year's over, maybe thank goodness in some people's cases, and encouraging them to go on to next year on the right foot, you know?
Now, the reports on the first page, I think you've established are fairly negative in tone.
Yes.
And the one that was written on March 1st, 1980 is more positive in tone. Is there something that happened between the writing of those first 3 reports and the writing of the report on March 1st, 1980?
Yes, there is.
And could you tell the jury what happened in terms of your interaction with either Lyle or his parents?
Rephrase the question.
Between the writing of the report in late 79 and the writing of the report in March of 1980, did you have a conference with Lyle Menendez's parents?
Yes, I did.
And was that conference held on what's called parent-teacher night?
Yes, it was.
Tell the jury what that is, please.
Halfway through the year, the parents come in for a conference, and I had a date. I suppose a date isn't exactly the right word. An appointment with Mr. and Mrs. Menendez. I'd been working at school all day, and they were late. The appointment, I think, was somewhere like 10:30 in the evening. They came in rather. I was leaving the building, as I remember, and they came in and accosted me. That would be a good word to use, I think, and asked me, excuse me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Next time, so raise your hand.
Please. I'm sorry. Am I going on
No,
too
that's
much?
okay. That's okay.
Let me
another question.
let me ask you a question.
All right,
okay?
then I'll just answer it and not make the long answer.
Tell me what hours were set aside for the parent-teacher conference
All right,
that evening.
as I remember, somewhere probably between, say, 7:30 and 10:30 in the evening, after a full day's teaching.
And had you been seeing other parents that evening?
Yes, I had.
And so you taught all day, and
Yes.
then you had to meet with parents of the
Right, and Mr. and
students?
Mrs. Menendez had the last appointment, and they were late, so I presume they were not coming, and then they arrived, and as I was saying, they accosted me.
All right.
Where do you think you're going, kind of thing.
And where did they accost you? Were you in the class?
Outside the school.
So you actually were leaving
Yes.
the building,
Yes.
and were you heading for your car? Or for,
Yes, I was heading for my car.
And at that point, they accosted you?
Yes.
And what happened right after they accosted you? Was there a conversation?
We then went back into the building, into the dining room where the conferences were taking place. And I mean, I didn't feel as if I had a whole lot of choice. I don't quite know whether I was intimidated, but I certainly had never been spoken to in all my umpty years of teaching in the way that Mr. Menendez spoke to me. I felt I was a professional. I am a professional. I didn't think I should be treated that way.
Okay, let's get a question here.
I'm sorry.
Hold on. Another question.
Could you describe, as succinctly as you can,
Sorry, Con.
Mr. Menendez's tone of voice when he accosted you?
Belligerent, demanding
And what was he demanding?
that I give him the conference that was his due, whatever the time.
And what was Mrs. Menendez's participation at that point?
Minimal.
Was she more or less in the background?
Yes.
And did Mr. Menendez prevail upon you to return to the classroom?
Of course.
At that point? And did you in fact sit down with him at that point and have a discussion?
Yes, I did.
And what did he want from you in terms of this parent?
I think he wanted me to appreciate the abilities of his son more than he perceived that I was.
Did he?
Excuse me, I move to strike. I think that's been speculation on the part of the witness.
Objection, sustain the answer straight.
Did Mr. Menendez discuss with you the fact that you had written a negative report on his son?
Yes.
Did he indicate to you who was responsible for the low grade which you had given
definitely,
his
yes.
son? Who did he say was responsible for the low grade?
Me.
Did he say how you were responsible for?
No, I was his teacher, and I should teach him, and I obviously hadn't done my job correctly, otherwise he wouldn't have got this low grade.
And did he place this blame on you in a tactful way?
No.
How did he?
Well, I just came out and said it. You know, my son can do better. You will make sure that he will.
And was this a request of you or a
No,
command?
not a request, a demand.
And how long did this conference last?
Oh, it was over as quickly as I could make it, probably 5 minutes, because I was anxious to leave.
And what were your impressions of the parents in terms of their demeanor as a result of having this conference?
As I said, I was flabbergasted.
Excuse me, move to strike the answer as her reaction was non-responsive, and it calls for conclusion.
March of 1980, that you were influenced by Mr. Menendez's belligerent behavior and the way you wrote that report.
Yes.
How were you influenced?
I decided to back off and not to be quite as tough as I might otherwise have been, but I decided I wasn't going to engage in any more confrontations or communication to avoid Mr. and Mrs. Menendez as much as I could, and that was a way of dealing with the problem.
Now, in your school, did the teachers talk about the parents and the students that they were teaching?
They were not supposed to, but of course they did.
And was it well known in your community of teachers that the Menendez parents were problem parents?
Yes.
Objection, excuse me, move to strike as being improper.
Reputation evidence.
Well, is that the word that was used, problem parents?
Yes, we do talk about problem parents.
Okay, objection overruled. The answer will stand.
And were you scheduled to teach Lyle Menendez again in the 8th grade?
Yes, I was.
Did something happen to prevent you from teaching him?
Yes, it did.
What happened?
Lyle appeared on my class roster, and then I was called into the head's office, who said, the Menendez parents have requested for you not to teach Lyle in 8th grade because there was a personality conflict.
And so you never
presumably between, I don't know whether it was between me and Lyle or between me and, in their perception, between me and Lyle.
And so you didn't teach him in
I was delighted not to.
Thank you very much.
Cross-examination.
Mrs. Cross?
Yes.
Did you have only one contact with the Menendez parents?
As a twosome, yes, I had contact with Mrs. Menendez on other occasion.
Your contacts with Mrs. Menendez, were those after this contact that you've described for the
Yes,
jury?
yes.
And were those contacts with Mrs. Menendez equally as unpleasant?
No.
And did she attend scheduled conferences with you?
No, it wasn't. It was an occasion of driving to a school trip where she drove me for about 2 hours in her car. It was more of a social occasion, you could say.
All right. And where did she drive you?
From Princeton Day School to Great Gorge Ski Area.
And how was her driving?
Fine.
Okay. And all right. When Mrs. Menendez, you had your contact with her then, was she pleasant to you?
Totally pleasant.
Okay. And I believe you've indicated that you wrote 5 reports for Lyle Menendez while he was your student, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And I believe the last 2 to 3 reports indicate some improvement.
Yes, that's true.
Was that accurate or not?
It's very difficult for me to remember in absolute detail what I was feeling about a particular student in the year 1979 to 1980. I can only go on, what I wrote down here and say, yes, it must have been accurate.
All right, so you wouldn't have given Lyle Menendez a grade that he didn't deserve just because his father yelled at you, would you?
No, I think that's very doubtful. I think I may have said something in the comment, as was indicated a minute ago, but I don't think that's a $64,000 question for any teacher. Are you influenced by the parents? And there's an ambivalence on that answer.
Well, let me just ask you this. What were the grade ranges? Was it 1 through?
1 through 6.
All right, and originally you've given him a 4B?
Yes, that was when he was brand new, had never been to PDS before, didn't know the expectations, and was having a hard time.
Okay. Did he improve during the course?
Yes, he did.
All right, so if you indicated in your report that he improved, that was accurate?
Yes, I will say it is.
And if there were 6 grades possible, you rated him a 4 and then raised it to a 3?
That's correct.
With 1 being the best?
1 was so superior that hardly anybody ever got it.
All right.
It's like an A+.
All right, so the traditional excellent score would have been a 2?
Exactly. An average score would be a 3, and below average would be a 4.
And what's a 5?
A 5, we never used it. In the middle school, no, the idea was nurturing and helping, building skills, this kind of thing. So it was really only a 4-point grade.
All right, and so between did you legitimately raise his grade from a 4 to a 3? I guess that's my question.
I think I did.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yes, just briefly. This contact you had with Mrs. Menendez,
Yes.
was that the only other contact that you met her?
Yes.
And you never had any other contact with Mr. Menendez?
No.
And when you went on this trip with Mrs. Menendez, her husband wasn't with her in the car, was he? Was he?
Oh, no, he was not.
And Lyle Menendez was not in the car?
No, he went on the ski trip on the school bus.
So it was just the two of you in the car?
Yes.
All right, and you didn't mean to suggest you were changing grades as a result of some bad conflict you had with the parents?
No, I didn't change the grade. That was, I tried to be, but I just remember distinctly being intimidated, and I especially remember this incident. I mean, you have so many students and so many parents to deal with. I don't remember them all, but I do remember that incident very, very clearly.
Thank you.
It didn't require much digging at all.
Thank you. That's
Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you. You may sit down, you're excused.
Tracy L. Baker. B-A-K-E-R.
Ms. Baker.
Yes.
How old are you?
24.
And are you currently going to school?
Yes.
And where are you going to school?
Cal State Fullerton.
And are you due to graduate soon?
Yes, I'll graduate in December with a degree in public relations.
And are you also working while you're going to school?
Yeah, I hold 2.
This is Tracy Baker, Lyle's ex-girlfriend. I wonder if this is the girlfriend that they were talking about, the Faith, what's her name? Wasn't her name Faith? Faith Goldsmith was talking about that Kitty and Jose did not like and talked really negatively about. I wonder if this is the girlfriend. Let's see what she's got to
2 jobs. I work as a waitress at a restaurant, as well as I work at the Anaheim Arena that just opened.
Have you had much time to watch this case on television?
To be honest, no. With my 2 jobs in school, I don't have time for much of anything else, so yeah.
Do you know Lyle and Eric Menendez?
Yes.
And when was it that you first met them?
Around October of 1988.
And for how long were you around them and their family?
Approximately 3 months, off and on. I saw them occasionally on weekends with their parents, and also during the week, going out, movies, whatever.
Okay. So you would have seen them in October?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
And in November?
Yes.
And were you there for Thanksgiving?
Yes, I was.
And was that the last time that you were with the family together?
Yes, that's the last time I saw them.
Okay. So that would have been October and November of '88, is that
Yes.
correct? You a little nervous?
I'm very nervous.
How many times did you have dinner at the Menendez home?
2 or 3.
And were you around Mr. and Mrs. Menendez some other times in addition to those 2 to 3 dinners?
Yes.
And how many other times were you around them?
3 or 4.
And when you were around them, was Lyle always there also?
Yes, always.
And was Eric there?
Yeah, I believe he was also there, all if not 1 or 2 of the times he may not have been, but I believe he was.
Did you spend time at the Menendez home?
Yes.
During one of the times you were at the Menendez home during this time period, did something unusual happen involving Mr. Menendez and a friend of Eric's?
Yes.
Where were you when this event occurred?
I was in the guest house where Lyle basically lived.
And who was there with you?
Just Lyle.
And what happened?
He received a phone call, which I ascertained was his father calling him by the way he responded. And apparently he had to go to the main house immediately. His father had ordered him to come there. Lyle asked me to stay behind in the house.
All right. And so it was a call from Mr. Menendez to Lyle, telling Lyle to come to the main house?
Yes.
And was it your impression that the call was from the main house?
Yes.
And did you stay in the guest house as you were requested to?
For a short period of time, yes.
And then did something unusual happen?
Yes, I heard loud shouting and slamming of car doors, and I was a little frightened. I didn't know what was happening, so I went to the main house.
Okay. And where in the main house did you go?
I went through the house and out toward the front door, and I was standing right on the front stoop in front of the big front door.
Okay. Who else was there at this time?
Eric, Lyle, Mr. Menendez, I believe a family friend, Ed Fenno, was there. myself, and I believe Mrs. Menendez was also standing in the front foyer, not actually outside. But and also I can't be sure, but I believe Cole, another friend of Lyle's, may have been there. I don't remember.
Okay. And when you got to the front step, what did you see?
I caught the tail end of Mr. Menendez shouting, in fact, almost screaming at a young man who either was getting into or out of a car in the street, and he was screaming at him, "If you come near my home or my family again, I'll kill you." And that was the tail end of that was all that I heard. And
now, when you heard this, did it sound like he was joking around, or did he sound serious?
Deadly serious. I was very put back. I didn't know how to react. I was very uncomfortable, and it scared me.
And this young man at whom he was yelling, did you see him leave?
Yes, he was leaving the property. I didn't ever see his face.
And after this incident, did Mr. Menendez return to the area where you were standing?
Yes, he did. I believe I think he may have asked me to actually go back to the guest house, but I'm unclear. I know he ordered the boys to go upstairs and wait for him. And at that point...
Just a minute. When you say he ordered the boys to go upstairs, who were you talking about?
Mr. Menendez.
And who are the boys?
Eric and Lyle.
Relax.
Okay.
All right, so he ordered Eric and Lyle to go upstairs?
Yes.
What did he say to them?
Something to the effect, go up to my room and I'll wait for me. I'll be right there. And he was yelling at them. He was obviously very agitated over something one or both of them had done.
Objection, move to strike. He was obviously very agitated and everything thereafter as a conclusion on the part of the witness.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken. That portion of the answer is stricken.
Now, when he ordered the boys, Eric and Lyle, upstairs, did he appear to still be angry or upset?
Yes.
And what did Lyle and Eric do?
They immediately went upstairs, and I was standing there, like very often it happened, not knowing what to do, feeling very uncomfortable.
When you say like had very often it happened, you mean in that home or in your life?
No, in that home.
Okay. Now, you said the boys went upstairs?
Yes.
Did Mr. Menendez go upstairs?
Yes, he did.
And did you see Lyle and Eric again that day?
Yes, I saw Lyle.
Okay. How much later, I'm sorry?
It was approximately 20 or 30 minutes later he came back to the guest house.
And did you get any explanation about what that was all about?
I tried asking basically what had made his father so angry and why they had been gone so long, and he just told me that it really wasn't something that he wanted to discuss with me. It was a friend of Eric's named Craig, and that it was really, that's all he wanted to tell me at that time. And I didn't feel it was appropriate to push it.
Wait, what? It was Craig Signorelli that he was threatening to end his life if he ever came near his sons again? Why? What, huh? How come we didn't hear that from the state's case? I'm so confused. Why was Jose threatening Craig Signorelli?
Did you have, you said you had dinner at the Menendez home 2 or 3 times?
Yes.
On one of those occasions, did something unusual happen?
Yes.
Okay. Where was this dinner? In the dining room, in the kitchen?
In the dining room.
Okay. And who was present?
Eric, Lyle, Mr. and Mrs. Menendez, myself. I believe that was it.
Okay. And was Mrs. Menendez serving the dinner?
Yes, she was. She was bringing plates of food from the kitchen, placing them on the table. She hadn't yet joined us.
Okay. Now, were you comfortable being there for dinner?
No, as maybe you can tell, I'm uncomfortable being in front of people I don't know anyway, and parents are always scary when you first meet anyone's parents or family. I felt very uncomfortable. It was a new situation to me. They were in a different social class. I just felt very uncomfortable as it was to begin with. So,
when you say they were a different social class, they were rich?
Yes.
Are you rich?
No.
When Mrs. Menendez put the food on the table, did something unusual happen?
Yes. She was standing behind me, so I don't know if she did something to provoke her husband, but before I knew it, he had stood up and pushed his plates out of the way, very violently knocking over all sorts of glasses and condiments, whatever, on the table, and said something to her like, "What did you do to this food? Why are you serving this food?" And she remained silent, and she was behind me, and I was just thinking, my goodness, what does a person do here?
And what did a person do here?
I just...
What did you do?
Yeah.
What did you do here?
I sat there and was quiet and nervous. Jose ordered Eric and Lyle to go wait outside for him, said nothing to me, and ran, I think he maybe went upstairs or somewhere. I don't know where he went. He left the room, and I was left again sitting there thinking, what do I do? And Lyle motioned to me to come with him.
What does that say to you guys? I feel like Jose felt like women were inconsequential. Like, you boys go up to your room, and he doesn't even mention the girlfriend. He's just like, whatever, do whatever in front of the girlfriend, because who cares? Because she's inconsequential. And then yell at Kitty because she's inconsequential, and we just need her to make our food, but when she screws it up, let's yell at her. This man, Jose, I don't like him. To say that in the lightest of terms, I really, really don't like him.
I was able to grab my purse and coat and whatever else, and we went out to the front where the cars were parked.
Okay. What did Mrs. Menendez do after Mr. Menendez pushed the food and said, "What did you do to the food?" or "Why are you serving this?" Whatever it was.
She did nothing. She said nothing, and I couldn't see her. She was behind me. She I don't even know if she was still standing in the room, to be honest.
So you went outside?
Yes.
Were Lyle and Eric already out there? Or did they go out there with you?
Well, Eric had kind of gone first, and Lyle I was straggling along with him, and I was standing. Eric and Lyle had gone off sort of to the side and were whispering.
Could you hear what they were talking about?
No.
Okay. And did Mr. Menendez then show up at some point in time?
Yeah, Eric moved to get in the front of the car, and Jose had opened my door for me in the back, and Lyle got around the other side, and Eric had asked his father something, do you think she tried something on purpose or something like this? And I don't exactly know if those are the right, that's just what I remember. And as I was getting in, I'm looking at Lyle, like, give me some explanation, what's happening here? And he's just very silent, very sort of in his own world.
Did you know what was happening?
No, I assumed perhaps.
Your move to strike everything that I assume is being conclusion and speculation for the witness.
The answer, no, will stand. The rest of the answer is stricken as conclusion.
Did Mr. Menendez seem extremely upset?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Did he join you in the car then at some point in time?
Oh, yes. After he opened the door, he immediately got in the car.
And did you and Mr. Menendez and Eric and Lyle go somewhere?
Yes, we went to eat at a Hamburger Hamlet down, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes away.
Okay. And did Mrs. Menendez come with you?
No, she did not.
Was there any discussion at the restaurant about what that had been all about?
No.
And once you got to the restaurant, was Mr. Menendez still angry and upset?
No, absolutely the opposite. I found him to be a very charming man. He was very nice to me. We discussed my schooling. In fact, he's the person who made me go to a four-year rather than a regular community college. After that conversation, I went home and wrote an essay about him and turned it in, and I applied to my school to get in. You have to write an essay to enter various colleges. And he was absolutely charming, and just, I really was amazed that someone could be so absolutely angry and then so nice to me 20 minutes later. It was just bizarre.
Okay. And the essay that you wrote about him, was it about his success?
Yes.
And on that occasion, did he tell you about his rise from rags to riches?
Not specifically.
Objection, irrelevant objection.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
For the rest of the meal, did Mr. Menendez continue to be charming and
yes,
attentive to you?
Yes.
Were you ever given an explanation of what happened that night?
No, never, and I didn't ever ask.
Were you at the Menendez home for Thanksgiving dinner that year in 1988?
Yes, I was.
And after the meal, did Lyle leave to take a friend of his home?
Yes, he did.
And did this friend live up in Malibu?
Yes, I think that's correct.
And did Lyle ask you to wait for him while he drove the other friend home?
Yes, he did.
Did you wait for him?
Yes.
Did you receive a phone call from him at some point in time while you were still waiting?
Yes, I'd fallen asleep on the couch, and Kitty came with the cordless phone and said that Lyle was calling from the car, and I took the call.
Okay. And in that conversation, did he ask you to continue to wait for him?
Yes, and I sort of protested. I was ready to go. I was tired, and he insisted that I wait for him, that he wanted to see me, and he apologized for having had to leave. So I did decide to wait. Okay.
And so after you finished your conversation with him, what happened next?
When I was finished talking with him, I got up and went to the kitchen and gave Kitty back the phone because I didn't know where it was supposed to be. And about 5 minutes later, she came in the room and told me that Lyle had changed his mind, that I had just better go ahead and go home.
Okay. And did you question her about that?
I sort of said, are you sure? You know, he was very insistent that I stay. And she said, no, I'm sure. You just better go ahead and go home. But before you do, I'd like to speak with you. And I said, okay.
And so what happened then?
She had asked that she said, Tracy, I have several questions for you. And she sort of had this tone about her already accusing, and I didn't ever feel very comfortable around her anyway. And she asked me, the first question she asked me was, I having a sexual relations with her son? And that's not something anyone's ever asked me, and I was absolutely blown away. And I was brought up to tell the truth, and I said yes. And she was real upset, and she...
What do you mean she was real upset?
Well, her voice and face started to look more, like she was bubbling inside. And I said to her, how did you want me to answer that question, sort of? And she continued saying that she knew that I had spent the night, and she didn't feel that was appropriate.
Had you spent the night?
Yes.
Where had you spent the night?
Once in the guest house, several other times in the maid's room.
Okay, now the times you stayed in the maid's room, that was in the main house, is that correct?
Yes.
And on those occasions, did Lyle stay in the guest house?
Yes.
And why was it that you stayed in the maid's room?
I thought that was appropriate. I lived far away, and I didn't want to disrespect anyone in their home, and I know that in my home, it's not appropriate for people to sleep with other people. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I felt that for me, it was best if I stay there to respect their home.
Yeah, she was just trying to be respectful. I'm going to pause right here because I got to go take care of my dog. I will be right back. Sorry about that. It's either feeding time or potty time or something with the dogs. So here we go. Let's continue. So she is trying to be respectful and not sleep, in the same bed with Lyle. She's trying to respect the parents' home and sleep in the guest house or the maid's house or maid's room, whatever.
And so what did she say to you about the relationship that you had with her son?
I don't remember exactly because my head was swimming because I was so embarrassed and nervous. She basically said that she had seen girls like me before and that whatever I wanted from her son, I wasn't going to get. And if I thought I was going to get a hold of his money, then think twice.
Did she treat you with respect?
No, absolutely not. And about this point, I had pretty much taken what I was going to take. I went to get up, and she literally grabbed my shoulders and shoved me back into the chair. And I'm getting emotional about it now. I mean, I have never had anyone physically do anything like that to me. And she just was standing above me, and it was just amazing that some person. I'm talking and rambling, but I was amazed, and I've never had that happen to me in my life, and ever in the past or in the future.
You can tell it was kind of traumatizing to her. She didn't like it, obviously. You know, who would like somebody doing that to them? And it's apparent that Jose and Kitty were very domineering people, not just to their boys, but to individuals around them, and including especially their boys. They were very domineering, but they had no qualms about doing it to strangers or to people that, you know, they hired to train their sons to play tennis, to teach tennis, or girlfriends. They don't care. They have no problem with just being rude a-holes to everybody.
Future.
After she grabbed you by the shoulders and pushed you back down, did she continue to ask you questions or express her opinions about you?
Yeah, she continued saying that I had borrowed a pair of his sweats or something, and she said something like, "Oh, you think you could take his things, and you think that you fit right in here, and I know where you're from, and he doesn't date girls like you," and, well, you know, just bizarre things that a normal person doesn't say to another person. It was very rude, and I grabbed myself. I was almost crying. I grabbed my things. I ran to the guest house. I said, "I'm really sorry that I offended you," and, you know, I kind of, whatever I said, I don't remember, just to get out of there. I got in the car and cried all the way home, and I think to this day, my self-esteem is just affected by it. I mean, I still feel like I'm not good enough for people.
I moved to strike everything after. I think to this day it's being irrelevant. It's just
Objection sustained. The rest of that portion of the answer and everything following is stricken.
It doesn't matter. The jury heard it. They're hearing it. I mean, we know the outcome of this. Unfortunately, it was a mistrial, but we still know that the jury heard these things, even if they are sustained.
Now, this incident occurred 5 years ago, is that correct?
Yes.
When Mrs. Menendez was having this conversation, if you will, with you, were you arguing back with her?
No.
Were you trying to convince her that you were right or she was wrong, or what were you doing?
I was trying to calm her down. I was saying, I understand what you're saying. I can see your point of view. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to disrespect you. You know, I better go ahead and get home. Just anything I could do to calm her down so I could leave. And I did. I mean, I don't think I calmed her down, but I was able, kept inching my way. I stood up again and got away, and I left. I mean, I don't think that I left probably in a polite way, but.
Now, what was she doing physically while she was yelling at you? Was she standing close to you?
She was standing very close in front of me, so close that she was almost touching my legs, and she waved her arms. You know,
You're clenching your fists here and holding your fists about shoulder level. Mm-hmm. Is that what she was doing?
I think so.
And did you tell Lyle about this incident a few days later?
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether or not I should, because I hadn't heard from him, and I was very hurt. I believed what she'd said to me, that he didn't want to see me. And then I got mad, and I said, I'm not going to let any guy or any person treat me this way, and I called him, and I told him why I left, and basically explained sort of what his mom had said.
Was that the end of the relationship?
Yes. I just told him that I didn't feel it was going to really work out, my living so far away, and he was going to be going back to Princeton.
Were you invited to his 21st birthday party, which would have been the January after this Thanksgiving?
Yes.
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained. Answer true.
Did Lyle's girlfriend, Jamie, invite you to his birthday party?
Yes.
Did you refuse to go?
Yes.
Why?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you ever see the Menendez family again after that?
No.
You said that Mr. Menendez, during the time that you had gone to the hamburger restaurant, had taken some interest in you and talked to you about school. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you call the house after this incident and ask to talk to Mr. Menendez?
Yes, I did.
And who answered the phone?
Kitty answered the phone. This was in August of 1989. I wanted to go to a concert that the band The Who was putting on, and Jose had made mention to me that any time I was ready to get into the business, the music industry, which is what I'd like to do, or if I ever wanted anything, to give him a call. And I thought I would take advantage of that because I wanted to get some good tickets. And I called, and Kitty answered, and I asked to speak with Jose, and she very rudely told me that he had just come back from a business trip and he was not available to talk to me. And I asked if I could leave a message, and she said that I couldn't. No, try calling another time. She hung up.
Did you identify yourself?
Oh, yeah. I said, this is Tracy, do you remember me? Nervously, of course, after my last experience with her.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Any examination on behalf of Eric Menendez?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
I'm not doing anything. I'm just Ms. Baker, on the evening that you were at the house where you heard Jose Menendez screaming about threatening to kill someone, you remember that evening?
Yes.
You said that Mr. Menendez then ordered the boys upstairs.
That's right.
And you said you saw Lyle 20 to 30 minutes later.
Yes.
Did you ever see Eric again that night?
No, I did not.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Yes.
Ms. Baker, in reference to the questions that you were just asked, where were you physically located when you saw Lyle again that night, the night that you heard his father make these threats?
I was in the guest house.
Okay, and it was your understanding that that was where Lyle was staying during that period of time, is that correct?
Yes.
And his brother Eric Menendez was not staying in the guest house, correct?
That's correct.
Is that one of the occasions on which during which you spent the night at the Menendez home?
Yes.
So would it be fair to say that you were dating Lyle Menendez in October and November of 1988?
Yes.
And approximately how many dates would you say you had with him?
Maybe 10, a round figure.
And included in these 10 dates, would the Thanksgiving dinner be one of them?
Yeah, maybe between 10 and 15. That would probably be one, yeah.
And I believe you indicated you had 2 to 3 family dinners and there were 3 or 4 other occasions when you had spent time with the Menendez family, which were not categorized as dinners. Do you recall your testimony?
Yes.
Would those have been dates as well?
No, mostly it was while they were playing tennis. I went several times to watch them play tennis where their parents also came along.
And when you go to watch them play tennis, would that be on the tennis court on their own property, or would that be at other locations?
Other locations.
Okay. Now, I believe you've indicated that you were in the guest house and you heard some noise, which caused, I'm referring to the incident where the young man was either getting in or getting out of the car, and Mr. Menendez said some things. And I believe you indicated you were in the guest house at the time that you first heard some noise. Is that correct?
Yes.
Where in the guest house were you?
On the patio.
You were outdoors?
Yeah, there's an upstairs patio.
So balcony?
Yeah, a balcony, yeah, sorry.
And so you were out of doors at that time, is that correct?
Well, yeah, there's an overhang. I guess I was outside. I was still within the confines of the house, but I sort of am nosy, and I was standing on the patio trying to see what I could see.
Now, when you said you were trying to see what you could see, was this after your attention had been drawn to some noise?
No.
Okay, so you're out on the balcony and you heard some noise. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you went to, and Lyle Menendez left your presence, and then shortly thereafter you went to see what was going on.
Lyle had left my presence prior to me going to the balcony, and I was curious because he left in such a hurry. I wanted to know what was happening, so I sort of was hanging out by the balcony, and at that point, I heard loud shouting, and I heard car door slamming, and this is when I went to the main house.
But how long after Lyle Menendez had left your presence was it that you heard the loud noises in the car door?
2 or 3 minutes, probably.
Okay. And then you left the guest house and you went out front to the where the cars are parked in front of the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And could you tell from where the noise was coming from when you were standing on the balcony of the guest house?
Generally, yes, but I knew it wasn't coming from inside the house. I could sort of tell it was out front, yeah.
Okay. And so then you went out and you saw Mr. Menendez. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe you've indicated that in addition to yourself, Mr. Menendez, the young man in the car, Lyle Menendez, and Eric Menendez, there was also a young man there named Ed Fenno. Is that correct?
Yes.
And potentially another friend of Lyle Menendez's named Cole.
Yes, I don't remember if he was there. It's in my mind, I remember his being around at that time, but I can't be sure of that evening.
Okay, by around at that time, Cole Kruger, is this Cole Kruger?
I don't know his last name, I just know his name is Cole. He's from Norway or something.
Okay. And it was your recollection then that he was around the Menendez home or around when you were dating Lyle Menendez, in what regards?
I think around at that, right before Thanksgiving time. I believe he was there for a visit. He wasn't an omnipresent person. He wasn't there constantly. He just was, I think, on a visit.
And he was staying at the home?
You know what? I don't think so. I don't remember.
Now, Ed Fenno was another friend of Lyle Menendez's. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And at that time, he was actually living in the Menendez home. Is that correct?
Yes, he was.
And on the occasions when you spent the night there, Ed Fenno was also spending the night there as well. Is that correct?
I think sometimes Ed would spend the night away from home, but most of the time he was there in the main house.
All right. So there were a number of people out in the area in front of the house when Mr. Menendez made this statement. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at the time that he made the statement, did he have any kind of firearms? There was a handgun or a rifle or anything like that in his hands?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Did he have any kind of weapon at all that you saw in his hands at the time that he said that he would kill this young man?
No, I didn't have a clear view of him. His back was to me, but not that I'm aware of.
All right. When this incident was over and the young man in the car had left, did you continue to see Mr. Menendez?
Yes, he came toward us, and like I said, I don't remember if he specifically told.
I mean, does it matter? It was a threat, regardless of whether the guy was holding a weapon or not. He was a 6 foot something, very large man, very powerful, very big presence of a man who I'm sure could take a young teenage or early adulthood normal sized person. Because from what we know, Jose was large, he was overweight, and he was also over 6 feet, I think. So he was a big guy. And that's a lot of people have testified to that.
Told me to go back inside, or whether I just did it. That was the last time I saw him.
Okay, and when he came towards you, was he holding any weapons?
No.
Did he strike the young man in the car? Did you see him hit him?
No, I didn't. I mentioned that I had come at the tail end.
Right, but the part that you saw, he didn't hit him, correct?
No, he was too far away. The guy was getting in or out of a car and on the street, and Jose was still within the confines of the driveway.
Okay, so the young man in the car was actually on the street, correct?
I think the car was sort of in, if you've ever seen the front of their home, there's a driveway, like sort of like this, and there's another driveway that sticks out and goes to the street, kind of. I think the car was there.
So it was in the driveway, but not all the way into the
area in
front of the house?
Making a quick exit kind of thing.
And so did you actually see Mr. Menendez when he made the statement, don't ever come back or I'll kill you or something like that?
I saw the back of his head. He was yelling, and I had just arrived on the scene.
Right. And when you arrived on the scene, all these other people were already there, with the exception of Cole, who may or may not have been.
Right, yes.
May I have a moment, please? Now, I believe you've indicated that Thanksgiving was the last time that you were at the Menendez home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that if you had 2 or 3 dinners with the family and had seen them 3 or 4 other times, those 3 or 4 other times would have been the tennis matches that you told us about just now?
Yes.
Okay. Before Thanksgiving dinner, how did Mrs. Menendez treat you?
She really didn't ever talk to me. At one tennis match, the first one I went, she sat huddled next to her husband on the other side of me and never even gave regard to me. I just assumed that.
Okay, well, I'm not asking what you assumed. I'm asking you how she treated you.
She didn't acknowledge me.
So you had no interaction with her, basically?
At that time, no.
Now, the dinner that you went to that
But she might not have had a conversation with her, but she's in and around her and having interactions with the people that she's also having interactions with. So I think it's not necessarily a fair statement to say that she's not having interactions. The whole, she's with the family at a family event. It's just that Mrs. Menendez is treating her like garbage and ignoring her the whole time. So that is an interaction. That is how things took place.
ended up at the Hamburger Hamlet. I take it then this was before the Thanksgiving dinner, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Now, I believe you indicated that after Thanksgiving dinner, you were waiting for Lyle Menendez to drive someone else home, and you were staying at the Menendez house during that time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Had you spent the night at the Menendez home during that Thanksgiving vacation, prior to Thanksgiving dinner?
I think so. I would generally stay on a weekend. So if Thanksgiving that year fell on a weekend, I think I probably did, because I lived far.
And were you going to school at the time?
Yes.
Now, when you had this conversation with Mrs. Menendez, I believe you indicated that before she grabbed your shoulders and caused you to sit back down, you had indicated to her that you had been having sexual relations with her son, Lyle Menendez, correct?
Yes.
And did she ask you if you had done this at her home?
She didn't specifically ask.
That doesn't give her permission to put her hands on her, regardless of what she tells Mrs. Menendez. Mrs. Menendez doesn't have permission to grab her by the shoulders and push her back into the chair. I don't like how the state's trying to weasel their way out of it.
Asked me. She told me that I had.
And did you disagree with her?
No.
Was it in fact true that you had had sexual relations with Lyle Menendez in his family's home?
Not in the main house.
Well, the guest house?
Yeah.
Okay, that was part of the family home, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you had no reason to believe that Lyle Menendez owned that guest house independently of his parents, did you?
No.
Okay. Did you think it was unreasonable for Mrs. Menendez to be upset that someone was having sex in her home?
I think that in this day and age, a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old, it's not. It may be a disappointment to her, but I don't think that it's so outrageous in this day that a person needs to be verbally assaulted the way she did to me. I don't think it's that unusual. I think that.
And they are both technically adults. And so what? So what? It's because Kitty is very possessive of her boys, apparently.
Most of us in this room would probably say that that's not unusual.
But you didn't ask her permission before you spent the night with her son in the guest house and had sexual relations with him, did you?
Of course not.
All right. And then, so she asked you, and you told her that you'd been having sex in her home, in her family's guest house, and she got upset, right?
She didn't specifically ask me in her guest house. She said, "Are you having a sexual relationship with my son?" Something to that effect. And again, I'm not in the habit of making lies up to people's parents that I potentially want to get to know better. And I didn't say, "Yes, I'm having sex in your house, ma'am." I didn't say that.
But she did ask you if you had spent the night there, correct?
Yes, but I spent the night there on many occasions, not many, but on several occasions, and didn't have any sexual encounters at all. I would stay in the maid's room and sleep and get up and.
And then on other occasions, you did have sexual encounters with Lyle Menendez in his parents' home, correct?
You're not asking the answer.
Correct?
No. Yes.
Okay. Now, I believe you indicated that the way she treated you was very upsetting to you. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Did she hit you? Aside from touching you on the shoulders and forcing you back down, did she hit you?
She didn't literally smack, but hit me, but physically very, very hard pushed me back down to the couch, and that I would constitute as definitely physical assault. That's not normal activity.
Did you receive any injuries as a result of this?
No.
Okay. And I believe you indicated that this was very upsetting to you, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And approximately in August of '89, you called the house back to get tickets to the Who concert?
Well, you make it sound very trivial. I had established a pretty decent, not relationship, but rapport with Mr. Menendez. And I didn't know if she would answer the phone. They had a maid. I didn't know who to answer. And I don't think it's that unusual to ask for someone. I wasn't asking her for the tickets.
Ms. Baker, where was the maid when you spent the night in the maid's room?
I believe she had certain weekends off. The 2 times that I spent the night in the maid's room, 2 or 3, she wasn't obviously there. And I think at the time, maybe they didn't have a maid. they'd either let her go or something happened, because I remember specifically that I thought it was very weird that Mrs. Menendez was serving the dinner, because she appeared to me to be sort of, a rich lady. She wouldn't be serving dinner to her family. She appeared to like probably to be served. And
But as a matter of fact, she did serve you dinner.
I wonder if Mr. Menendez's reaction to food he didn't like might be one of the reasons why there's no maid, or maybe it wasn't the food, but maybe the fireplace mantle didn't get dusted that day or something, like who knows? Something could just set him off because these individuals are like ticking time bombs and they are going to blow at any moment. And you have to walk on eggshells to be around them because you don't want to set them off.
On more than one occasion, didn't she?
Actually, Thanksgiving we had sort of a buffet style. But
now, in August of '89, do you remember what part of August it was that you called to get tickets to the Who concert?
it was real early in the month. I think the concert was the third week of August, and I wanted to make sure I had ample time to ask him.
So in spite of the fact that you'd suffered this trauma at the hands of Mrs. Menendez, you did call the Menendez home to get tickets to a concert. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Answer the answer to
Objection sustained.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Any redirect?
The state really tried to make her look bad, and it just made the state look bad, I think, by trying to show, oh, she just wanted Who tickets. Who cares? Who cares? She had a connection. The guy told her, if you ever need anything. So she wanted some good Who tickets. Who doesn't want good tickets to a good rock concert? I mean, come on. That doesn't make her like this money grubbing, hungry, like gold digging, whatever, which is what I think they want to portray her as, which I don't like.
All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused.
David Mravich. Mraovitch.
Mr. Mravich, am I saying your name correctly?
Close enough.
How old are you?
22.
And do you go to school?
Yes.
Where do you go to school?
I go to University of Pennsylvania.
What do you study?
Philosophy and psychology.
And do you know Eric Menendez, who's sitting in court in the turquoise sweater?
Yes.
When did you first meet Eric Menendez?
In 8th grade.
And where were you? What school were you attending in the 8th grade?
Princeton Day School.
And was Eric also attending Princeton Day School when you met him?
Yes.
Was he in the same grade as you or a different grade?
Same grade.
What year was it, if you recall, that you first met Eric?
What year was 8th grade?
Yes.
I guess 85, 84.
Okay. In the 8th grade, you would have been about 14?
Yeah.
Yes. Is that yes?
Yes.
Did you also know Eric Menendez in the 9th grade?
Yes.
And were you still attending PDS in the 9th grade?
Yes.
Were you friends with Eric Menendez?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Mravich, I'm going to direct your attention to an incident that occurred in the 9th grade when you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles with Eric and his mother. Do you have that incident in mind?
Yes.
And do you remember what time it was during the school year that you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles with Eric and his mother?
Yes.
What time was it?
Spring.
And was there a particular reason why you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles at that time?
Yes.
And what was that reason?
Eric was getting his moped license.
Now, in New Jersey, is it your understanding that youngsters under the age of 16 are allowed to get a license to drive a moped?
Yes.
When you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles, did Eric have to take some sort of a test?
Yes.
And did you observe him take that test?
Yes.
What kind of a test did you see him take?
He had to ride his moped around a track, and he had to perform certain activities. He had to stop and make a signal and do whatever the guy said.
Okay. Was there was a man who was administering this test?
Yes.
And when you watched Eric take this test, was his mother present?
Yes.
And did she also appear to be watching him take the test?
Yes.
How long did the test take?
It took about 15 minutes.
Okay. And after the test, did someone come over to inform Mrs. Menendez of whether Eric Menendez passed or failed?
Yes.
Who came over to give her that information?
The DMV person.
And did he tell her that Eric passed the test or failed
He
the
told her
test?
that he failed the test.
And did he tell her why he failed the test?
Yes.
Why did he say he failed the
He
test?
said that Eric put his foot down when he wasn't supposed to.
Okay, now, how did Mrs. Menendez react to receiving this news that Eric hadn't passed the test?
She was very angry. She got very upset.
What did she do? Describe what you saw, please.
She started yelling at the DMV person and said that Eric did everything correctly, and that there was no reason why he shouldn't have passed.
Okay. When you say yelling, are you telling us that she raised her voice?
She was getting very upset and practically screaming at the guy.
Was this in Eric's presence?
No.
Okay. And how long did this go on?
For about 5 minutes.
Now, you said that Mrs. Menendez had told the DMV person that Eric had done everything correctly and shouldn't have failed the test?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Moravich, had you watched Eric take this particular test?
Yes.
And did you see whether or not Eric had put his foot on the ground as the DMV man described?
Yes, I saw it.
And did he put his foot on the
Yes,
ground?
he did.
So what was Mrs. Menendez then not telling the truth to the DMV man that she was screaming at?
Objection calls for speculation, lack of foundation.
Did Mrs. Menendez, did her comments to the DMV man, were those inconsistent with what you knew to have happened?
Objection calls for speculation.
Did the incident at the Department of Motor Vehicles involving Mrs. Menendez and Eric make an impression on you?
Objection irrelevant.
Is there a particular reason why you remember that incident now?
Yes.
Irrelevant.
That answer will stand.
Okay. And what is the reason why you remember that incident now?
Objection irrelevant.
Come on.
I'm going to ask that you direct your attention to November of 1989. Where were you living then?
In November of '89, I was living at Brandeis University campus.
And were you going to school at Brandeis University?
Yes.
What year were you in at Brandeis?
It's my freshman year.
Did you at some point in November of 1989 receive a phone call from Eric Menendez?
Yes.
Okay, and during a particular phone call in November of 1989, did Eric extend an invitation to you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, what did he say?
He
Where did
asked-
he invite you?
He invited me to Cancun
And where's Cancun?
in Mexico.
And when he invited you to go to Cancun, was that a convenient time for you to leave school?
No.
Why not?
I had classes. It meant cutting classes.
Did you agree to go to Cancun with Eric?
Yes.
And why was it that you agreed to leave school at that time and go to Cancun with Eric?
Because Eric said that he needed a friend to talk to.
And that was why he had asked you to join him.
Yes.
How did you get to Cancun?
I took a plane.
And was this a ticket that you bought yourself?
No.
Who paid for the ticket?
Eric did.
Now, how long were you in Cancun?
For a week.
So they have money to spend, or parents let them go on vacations with friends and pay for their tickets. So either the boys have money freely to spend for some things, and that's how Eric paid for this, or he got permission from his dad to go to Cancun with a friend, and then it was paid for. So this goes to the point that even after their parents were gone and they were off buying things, it's not unheard of for this family to just go out and get what they need when they want it. And this money came in because of insurance, and they obviously used that to buy cars and watches and restaurants, which now we know Lyle always wanted a restaurant, so it's not unheard of that he would go and purchase a restaurant. He always wanted to run one. That's what we learned in testimony. So now all the things that they were doing post homicide make sense because they're accustomed to that lifestyle. They are already accustomed to the champagne and caviar lifestyle that most of us will never understand. They've had how many houses and they're all mansions? Like, come on. I've never even been in a mansion.
And during the week that you were in Cancun, did Eric talk with you regarding a therapist
Yes.
that he was seeing?
Yes.
And what did he tell you about the therapist that he was seeing?
He said that he was seeing a therapist and that somebody had chosen this therapist for him.
Let me stop you. Did he say who had chosen the therapist for him?
No.
He told you that this wasn't someone that he had decided upon or chose himself. Is that correct?
Objection leading.
Can you repeat the question?
He told you that this therapist was not someone that he had chosen or decided upon himself.
Yes.
And what else did he say about the therapist that was chosen for him?
He said that he was trying to tell the therapist things to make him feel better, but that the therapist was more interested in his financial affairs than he was in making him feel better.
And when Eric talked about making him feel better,
Oh, Dr. Oz Oziel. Now we're learning a little bit more about you, and we will soon hear Judalon Smith's testimony. I think it's after part 5 or 6. I can't remember. It's in between some of the parts there. So I think we'll hear from her soon, very soon. Judalon Smith, in case you're wondering or forgot, she's the mistress of Dr. Oziel, who seemed to be more interested in the Menendez money than helping Eric Menendez get better and feel better.
Or did you understand that to mean making him feel better about the deaths of his parents?
Yes.
During the time that you saw Eric in Cancun, how would you describe his emotional state?
Yeah. When I first got down there, he was.
I take back what I said. Sorry about that. This is after. So this is once they had the money, they went down to Cancun apparently because it's after the homicides. So again, I still don't think that it's out of the realm of normal possibility that they could just, go buy things. Although they would need Jose's permission, or Jose would just buy it for them, whatever they needed. So the family's still accustomed to just getting what you want when you need it because you got money. And they still had that rich champagne and caviar type mentality. So I still think that it matters.
He seemed pretty upset. He seemed kind of out of it, and just needed to talk to somebody who he felt he could trust.
And did he appear to trust you?
Yes.
Did he tell you that?
Yes.
Now, you said that when you first arrived, Eric was upset and out of it. Did his mood change during the trip?
Yeah, he got better.
When you say he got better, what do you mean?
I mean, I was trying to cheer him up, and I think it worked.
Okay. Was there any change in Eric's mood towards the end of the trip when he was about to go back to Los Angeles and you were about to go back to Brandeis?
Yeah, he seemed wary of going home.
I'm sorry.
He seemed wary of going home.
When you say wary, what do you mean?
He seemed like he knew he had to deal with a lot of pressure, a lot of unusual circumstances.
I'm going to move to strike everything after 18 to be a conclusion on trial.
Objection sustained. The answer is struck.
Okay. Now,
pressure
of going home. Okay. Did he say or do anything that made you think he was wary of going home?
Well, he told me that he had a lot of pressure to deal with when he got home.
Okay. Now, did he say anything else during the visit about the therapist and his feelings about him?
Yes.
And what did he say?
He said he didn't trust him.
Did he explain why he didn't trust the therapist?
He said that the therapist was only interested in, or was primarily interested in his financial affairs and what he was doing with his money, and not with helping him.
And did Eric indicate to you at that point in time that he needed help?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. In fact, that was your understanding of the reason why you were invited to go to Cancun.
Yes, exactly.
May I just have a moment, Your Honor? Returning for a minute to the DMV incident with Mrs. Menendez, what was the behavior that you saw her engaging in at that time unusual behavior for her?
Directing calls for speculation.
Sustained. One question.
Okay. Had you seen Mrs. Menendez during the 2 years that you were friends with Eric in 8th and 9th grade?
Yes.
Okay. About how many times?
About 6 or 7 times.
Okay. And during the 6 or 7 times that you saw her, were you able to observe the way she reacted with her son and other people?
13-352.
Yes.
Okay. And was the incident at the DMV, was that unusual behavior in your experience with her, or was that normal?
It was very unusual.
Okay. So it stuck out in your mind?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Moravich, is that close enough?
Close enough.
Okay. The behavior that you saw Mrs. Menendez display at the DMV, you said it was unusual.
Yes.
Okay. How did she normally behave towards you?
She didn't really behave towards me at all. She was, most of the time, she acted like she didn't even notice I was there.
Was she ever cruel to you while you were at the Menendez home?
No.
Was she ever mean to you, or did she ever strike you or anything?
No.
Okay. But on this particular day, you remember her behavior because she was angry with the man at the DMV, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I believe you indicated that you actually saw Eric Menendez put his foot down, which was what the DMV man was complaining about, correct?
Yes.
Did you see him do anything else wrong while he was taking his moped test?
No.
Now, this trip to Cancun came at an inconvenient time for you because you were in your first semester of your freshman year, correct?
Yes.
And do you remember what part of November it was that you went to Cancun? Was it the beginning, the middle, or the end?
I believe it was the beginning.
Do you remember approximately when? Like what day?
What day of the week?
Sure, that would be helpful.
I think it was a Sunday or a Monday that I left. I think I got back the next weekend, Saturday.
All right, so you were there about 6 or 7 nights. I'm sorry, say that again. You left on a Sunday or Monday and you got back the following?
Following Friday or Saturday.
All right, so you were there 5 or 6 nights?
Yes.
All right. Now, during this period of time, did Eric Menendez ever talk to you about the night that his parents were killed?
Yes.
And what did he tell you about the night that his parents were killed?
Can you repeat the question?
What did Eric Menendez tell you while you were in Cancun about the night that his parents were killed in August of 1989?
He said that he saw his parents dead.
Did he ever indicate to you during your trip in Cancun that he had been responsible for the death of his parents?
No.
Did he ever in any way indicate to you that he wanted to tell you something about his participation in the killing of his parents?
I don't recall.
Do you recall during your trip in Cancun feeling suspicious that perhaps he was involved?
Objection or false speculation.
Mr. Moravich, I believe you indicated that Eric Menendez got you to go on the Cancun trip because he really needed someone to talk to, someone he could trust. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that during the time that you were there, he indicated to you that he'd been talking to a therapist who he didn't trust, correct?
Correct.
Did he tell you that he confessed his participation in the killings of his parents to this therapist?
No.
Did he tell you that his brother had threatened the therapist?
No.
Did he tell you that the therapist had made some tapes to protect himself from the Menendez brothers?
No.
Okay. So during the time that you were with him in Cancun, did he portray himself as someone who had merely found his parents' dead bodies the night of August the 20th?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overall.
He didn't portray himself in any particular way. In fact, I tried to avoid the subject of his parents' death because I was trying to make him feel better.
Right, but during the course of your week or your 5 or 6 nights in Cancun, he did talk to you about that night, did he not?
Yes, but very briefly.
And what did he tell you? That he come home and found his parents dead, is that correct?
He told me that he saw his parents dead.
Right, and he didn't give you any other information about what he'd done that night, is that correct?
That's correct.
And by telling you that he found his parents dead, did he lead you to believe that he was not involved in their killings?
Objection. This state's testimony calls for speculation.
Calls for opinion. Objection. Sustain.
Sir, on August the 21st of 1989, the day after Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were killed, did you talk to Eric Menendez on the phone?
Objection, Your Honor. Beyond the scope, and I'd ask for a question.
All right.
Sir, during the time that you were with Eric Menendez in Cancun, did he ever talk to you about how he felt about his father?
No.
Did he ever talk to you about any problems he'd been having with his father prior to his father's death?
In Cancun?
Yes.
No.
Did he ever talk to you about how he felt about his mother during the trip in Cancun?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes.
And what did he tell you about his mother?
He said he was very upset about his mother.
Now, I believe you indicated that one of the reasons that you left your first semester at school and went to join Eric Menendez is because he indicated to you that he really needed someone to talk to, correct?
Yes.
And he needed someone he could trust?
Ask and answer, Your Honor.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Did he ever tell you that between the ages of 6 and 18 his father had been sexually abusing him?
No.
And he never told you during that trip that he had participated in the killings of his parents, did
Ask
he?
and answer, Your Honor.
He never told you that, did he?
No.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Moravich, did Eric in Cancun tell you that he was very upset about his mother's death?
Yes.
And did he, in fact, talk about his mother in Cancun as if she was still alive, using the present tense?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further. Well, maybe not.
For with the other members. Might have another question here.
Remember, returning for a moment to the conversations about the therapist, was there any particular thing that you remember that the therapist was trying to do that was making Eric not trust him? Did Eric tell you about any particular thing that the therapist was doing that made Eric not trust him?
Yes.
And what was it that he told you?
He said that he wanted to know what he was doing with his money and how he was planning to use it.
Did what Eric told you, did it appear that the therapist was inappropriately involved in Eric's financial affairs?
Objection calls for a conclusion on argument.
Did Eric tell you that he felt the therapist's desires to be involved in his financial affairs made him feel any certain way?
He asked me what I thought of it. He didn't know what to make of it.
And that was, again, one of the reasons why Eric didn't trust the therapist.
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else? Thank you. Step down. You're excused. Let me see counsel, please.
Eat low.
All right, this is going to be our last witness of the day. This was one of the longer videos. Some of these defense videos are a little bit longer, so it's a good thing I have the ability to pause it now because I would never get them done in a day because of the dog interruptions constantly. All right, so this is Skip Lowe, who had dinner with the family, and this is his direct examination with the defense, because this is the defense's case. All right, let's go.
My name is Skip, E, initial Lowe, L-O-W-E.
Good morning, Mr. Lowe.
Good morning.
Mr. Lowe, directing your attention to 1989, in the spring to summer months, did you attend some sort of a function in Beverly Hills?
Yes, I did.
And what type of a function did you attend?
It was a black tie affair.
Okay, and was this a benefit for some particular organization?
Yes.
Do you recall what organization was going to profit or benefit from this event?
It was some sort of a Jewish organization, that's all I know. I don't know if it was the City of Hope or whatever, I don't remember.
All right, and where was it that this benefit was held?
At the Beverly Hilton Hotel.
The Beverly Hilton?
Hilton, mm-hmm.
And are you able to recall the specific date that this benefit was held?
Around springtime, something like that.
Did you attend the benefit alone or with someone else?
I escorted a lady,
And who was that lady that you escorted?
the actress Mamie Van Doren.
Now, when you arrived at the benefit, were you assigned a table to sit at?
Yes.
And did you know the people at the table, any of the people at the table at the time you arrived?
No.
How many people were assigned to your table?
I think about 10.
Okay. Do you know the names of any of them?
No.
Was there anyone assigned to the table that you sat at that evening that you recognized today in court?
No, except the boys.
Okay. When you say the boys, are you referring to two individuals who are sitting at council table?
No, just here.
Okay. I'm standing in back of a young man in a green shirt. Do you recognize him as having been at the table?
Yes.
Okay. And there's also another young man who's wearing a green shirt.
Yes, yes, yes.
Do you recognize him
Yes.
as having been at the table? Now, were these two young men in the company of anyone else?
Their parents, mother and father.
And do you recall the seating arrangements? That is, who were you sitting next to?
I was sitting next to Mamie Van Doren, and they had a couple next to Mamie, and then Lyle, and then Eric, and then the father, and then the mother, and a Canadian couple, and myself.
Okay. So that Eric was sitting next to his father, is that
Yes.
correct? And during the course of the evening, did you have an opportunity to observe interaction between the two brothers and their parents?
Yes.
During the course of the evening, did something unusual happen involving Mr. Menendez and one of his sons?
Yes.
Which son was involved in this incident?
Eric.
And what particularly did you see that happened?
Mamie Van Doren was talking to the father, and the father was talking to Mamie, and all of a sudden, Eric wanted to say something to Mamie Van Doren, and the father interrupted him and pinched him real hard in the arm and told him, "Shut up, dummy, I'm talking to you." And the boy just stopped, and Mamie and I looked at each other, and...
All right, finish the question.
All right, let me ask you another question. What tone of voice did Mr. Menendez use when he said, "Shut up, dummy"?
very harsh and loud.
And when you say that he pinched Eric, could you tell us what specifically he did?
In the arm.
Okay, you're indicating the upper arm area?
Yes, something like that.
Did Eric react in any way to what his father did or said?
He turned red and didn't say a word and put his head down and took the fork and played with food.
Now, were you able to see whether or not Mrs. Menendez had any reaction?
That's so embarrassing to do to someone. It's not even like he did anything wrong. He just wanted to say something. That's so rude.
To this incident. Did she respond?
She was talking to the Canadian couple next to her, and she seemed like She heard it.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Did Mrs. Menendez do anything or say anything that made you think that she had heard what her husband had said?
Seemed like she was out of it to me.
Okay, what do you mean when she seems like it was...
It didn't mean anything to her. It just didn't mean anything.
I think what they're trying to get at is that nobody reacted because everybody's so used to Jose being this ABUSIVE person that it just happens all the time. So this is like nothing. This was probably mild compared to what really happens in the home. So a little pinch and calling him dummy in front of a table full of strangers, that's embarrassing. God. And he's probably like a teenage boy, probably like the worst time of his life, where you don't want to be embarrassed like that in front of a bunch of strangers.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Was there anything unusual that you saw that evening about Mrs. Menendez's behavior?
Objection relevant.
Sustained.
But how long was it that you were at this benefit at the table with the Menendez family?
How long? I'm sorry. How long?
How long were you there that evening? Was it
Not very long. Not very long at all.
And after this incident occurred with Mr. Menendez and his son Eric, were you able to see how both brothers acted?
I think Lyle was a little embarrassed.
Sustained. Answer stricken.
Did Lyle do or say anything after this incident?
No, not at all. Neither of them.
Pardon?
Neither of them did.
Yeah, if you just back up, it would be
Oh,
okay.
sorry. Forgive me.
So you get a little too close.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. I'm an entertainer. I have projection. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, just don't project so close
Thank
to
you.
the microphone.
Thank you.
Now, let me ask you to focus on the interaction between the two brothers that you saw that evening.
Right.
Could you describe how they were acting?
Can you be more specific, please?
Yes. Could you describe the demeanor of the two brothers subsequent to the incident which involved Mr. Menendez pinching his son and telling him to shut up?
It seemed like the father wanted to talk to Mamie Van Dorn.
Sustained. Answer stricken.
I'm focusing on the period of time after
Right.
this incident with the father
Right.
pinching Eric.
The mother got up and left about 10 minutes after, went to the bathroom.
And when she left to go to the bathroom, did she come back within a short period of time?
No, we didn't stay.
Okay. How long after the mother left to go to the bathroom did you then leave?
The father got up about 10, 15 minutes after, looking for her, evidently, I think. And Mamie and I just got up because she lived in Newport Beach, and she wanted to get home, and she thought the whole thing was very heavy.
Your Honor, move to strike premise of Mamie Van Dorn as being hearsay.
Sorry.
All right, the portion of the answer starting with she thought and everything thereafter is stricken as hearsay and non-responsive.
All right. You said about 10 minutes after Mrs. Menendez left the table, Mr. Menendez got up as well?
Yes.
And at that point, did you leave?
Immediately. We just said goodnight and got up, and the two boys were the only ones at the table, got up and stood for Mamie and I to leave. The Canadian couple did not, and the other two couples weren't around, so we just left. We said
And
thank you.
Why did you leave at that point in time?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Was there anything that had happened during the dinner which caused you to leave? At
Very
that point in time?
uncomfortable.
Objection irrelevant. Move to strike the answer.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Let me ask you for a moment, Mr. Lowe, about how Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were acting towards one another during the course of the evening that you were able to observe.
She was talking to the Canadian couple mostly. She wasn't talking to her husband at all.
Okay, did there appear to be any tension between Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
Sustained.
Was there anything unusual about their interaction that you remember now that occurred in front of the two boys?
Did you have something that you wanted to be heard about at the sidebar?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Your Honor, I have no additional questions at this time.
All right, any cross-examination?
Could I ask just
Oh, I'm sorry, sure.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe, you said this incident occurred in the spring of '89?
Around, something like that.
Is that your best approximation?
Yes, it is.
All right. And when the comment was made and Mr. Menendez was pinching Eric, what was Lyle doing at that point when that took place?
You know, I really can't remember. I just noticed the pinch, and I noticed the reaction of the young man, and I don't know.
And what was the reaction, if any, of Lyle Menendez right after this happened, if you saw him?
All right, did you see any reaction?
Not quite, not really. I think it was
Okay,
kind of
you've answered the
sorry, sir.
Right. And after the incident took place, was there any visible reaction up to the point in time when you left by Lyle Menendez?
He seemed kind of sad. He seemed like it happened before. It seemed like
Your
he's
Honor, move to strike seem like it happened before as being pure speculation on the part of the
Objection sustained. That portion of the answer is stricken.
Did Lyle Menendez express surprise, like that was something out
No.
of the ordinary?
No.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Lowe, you had never seen any of these people before that night, correct?
No, ma'am.
So you don't know what
Wait,
they're...
wait, yes or no? Have you ever
I'm
seen
sorry.
them before?
I'm sorry.
Okay, it's not
No,
your
sir.
fault. It's
I'm
what the
sorry.
question was
No,
asked.
sir.
No, you have not.
No, I have not.
All right, so you don't know how these people behaved on any other night except for the night that you saw them, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How was that that you were contacted by the defense to testify in this case? Did you call someone or did someone call you?
I called somebody.
And when was it that you called someone in regards to being a witness in this case, Mr. Lowe?
I saw a tennis player on your court, and then after I saw the tennis player, then I realized the two boys we knew. We didn't know it. I didn't know it until then. And then Mamie called me, and then we talked on the phone, and then that's it. And then I felt very, very sad what happened at the table. I remember the whole incident, and she does too. And so that's what happened.
All right,
And
so then
so I called the attorney to let her know.
And you've been following the case on television?
Definitely not. The
Well-
only case I've seen is the tennis player. I don't know what is happening here.
All right, but it was seeing something on television that made you recall this event and contact the defense. Is that correct?
No, Mamie Van Dorn told me before, a long time ago when it happened, but I didn't contact the whole thing until I felt with the tennis player he was on.
And you contacted the defense to be
That's when I
witness.
did, yes. Mhm.
And so, now you say you're an entertainer, sir?
Yes, I have a talk show, a talk celebrity show.
Okay, and you're aware
That's
that,
where I brought Mamie Van Dorn that night. Go ahead.
and you're aware of the fact that this is being televised. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you aware?
Overall.
Are you aware of the fact that these proceedings are being televised?
No, I do not.
Thank you.
I just know I've seen it on TV.
Okay, anything else?
Just one question. Mr. Lowe, did you come forward because you wanted to be on television?
Definitely not. Definitely not. I'm on television every day. If you turn channel and cables, I'm on every day. So I don't need to be here. I thought I had something to say.
And you indicated that Ms. Van Dorn contacted you at some point.
Down straight. That was great. I liked that. Okay. Anyways, go on.
After the news of the Menendez parents' death occurred to remind you of this. Is that correct?
Certainly did.
And was it right after the news of the parents' deaths that she first contacted you about the incident?
Yes.
Excuse me. Okay, and the tennis player that you referred to, is that a witness who testified in this case?
Yes?
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank
I'm
you
sorry.
very much. I have nothing further.
That's it. That's it for today. So far we have heard from several friends on both sides, the state's case and the defense case. We've heard from friends, family, many coaches throughout their tennis, swimming, soccer careers. Um, I feel like so far, I know we're only on part 4 of the state's case, but we've been through both friends and family on both sides now. And I feel like these witnesses are so much more credible on the defense side. Like, I don't even know what we watched in the state's case. They were not credible. A lot of the cross examination, the witnesses were impeached or made to look like they were money hungry or hungry for fame. So, I don't know. It seems to me like an easy case, but we know so much more now than we did back then. And a lot of things were kept secret back then, and we didn't want to talk about it. We still don't, but I mean, it needs to be discussed in order for things to change. In order for us to effectively make change, we need to know what's going on. So, anyways, we've heard from family and friends. We've got more to go. We I lost my train of thought. We definitely have more episodes to go. I think there's like 10 parts for the defense, and then we've got that doesn't even include all of the expert witnesses, and then we've got Lyle and Eric both do testimony on the stand. So that's not till the end, obviously, but we still have a long way to go. I think, the state's case was like so simple and quick, and they didn't, I mean, they had some people to kind of talk bad about the boys, but not really. I mean, a lot of them were impeached, like I said, so that everything, those witnesses seem pretty incredible or uncredible. And so far, I feel like every single person that's come on for the defense has really seen things, corroborated things. Like each one of the witnesses is corroborating one each other's. Yeah, each other. Okay. One witness is corroborating the other witness's testimony, and now we're getting the full picture. Before we weren't. Now I think it's starting to come clear because these family members who actually spent time, I think especially like the cousins who lived in the house, are very. Can you stop that, dog? You're messing my stuff up like you always do every stream. Sorry. Yeah. Now I totally lost my train of thought again. But ex-girlfriends. I mean, come on. Kitty did not like Lyle's girlfriend, and she made no issue about letting her know she didn't like her. What a rude person. I think Jose and Kitty were just very rude, self-centered, narcissistic, whatevers. Um, and they had no business having kids that they weren't going to raise properly or, without hurting them. That's Your parents aren't supposed to hurt you. Your parents aren't supposed to do those things to you. And it's a tragic story all around. I do want to leave you again with that question that I asked earlier. If Lyle and Eric were able to escape their father without having to resort to homicide, what do you think the boys would be doing now? What careers would they have? Would they be athletes? Let me know in the comments below. I think they could have been well-adjusted citizens if their situation was different. Obviously, they had means, they had money and opportunities that most people would never have. And yet, because of the horrible situation that they were facing at home, they felt that their only way out was homicide, them or their parents. And they truly felt like it was one or the other. And they didn't see that there was a whole realm of possibilities in between. And I guess that's why we're here. But I I've said before, and I'll say again, I think they've done their time, and I think it's time for them to come home. And I'll just leave it at that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Should they come home? Have they served their time? Do you think they could be well-adjusted, law-abiding citizens if they ever were to be let out? I think so. I don't think they're harmful in any way, but that's just my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye now. If you've been impacted by a true crime and would like your story told in your own words, or if you or someone you know has been wrongfully convicted or accused of a crime, please write to crimeincourtchannel@gmail.com and tell us your real true crime encounters. Thanks for watching.